Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. It is time for more Go to Bedcast, or Go to Bed Deadcast. And we're keeping up with tradition here in doing my last stream for the month, Spooky Scary Stories. Yo, hey, eating dinner, so I'm gonna be idle. That's good, cause it's gonna be same rules as usual. I'll read a story, and then we'll get back to text or chat. So, I don't know if I'll be able to do the full 5 hours this time, but I'm going to go as long as possible. It has been a long day, and overall a long month, but I want to do this, and I love reading stories to you guys. And so, I'm in my most comfy clothes. I've got some tea in hand. Will we idle too? That's fine. We are going to, as usual, start off with Ghost Puncher. It's a familiar story, but for a good start. But I have also found one of the creepypastas that I've been wanting to read on stream for the longest time. And we'll probably dip into that after one or two. It's a long one, and I think we'll just look at chat between chapters. It's one that was so good that it was published into an actual book. Spook time for spook, exactly. So I'm just going to ask you guys right now if you guys can hear me well over the audio. And if you can, then we'll get right into it. Actually, I should pop out chat real quick. Be nice if there was an always on top option. But not seeing any complaints here. So, let's get on to Ghost Puncher. Spook me out, I need it. Whoa. First story is not too spooky, as you guys remember, but it's always good to start tradition with tradition. So here we go. Friend is not in the story let me recover. Friend not in the story tells us about place to get palm readings. Lifting buddy and I go to get palms read. Show up to this shady-ass place at 10 in the morning wearing our workout gear. Ghost bitch is already mired. Stereotypical scraggly gypsy woman shakes our hands and seats us at the table with a crystal ball. Asks who wants to go first. Hispanic heritage kicks in and I nope at the last minute. Friend chads up to the plate. Woman grabs his hand. He flexes slightly. Woman goes from smiling to horrified. Starts grabbing and studying his hand like a last will. Feeling weird, man. Tells me my friend he's got something following him. Ask him if he did any Ouija voodoo bullshit. Says he smashed a hole in the wall when he was drunk lifting at home. Says there was some type of decorative skull behind it that he now uses as decoration in his bedroom. Gypsy lets us leave without paying. At the gym 30 minutes later, spawning friend while he benches. Some newbie dumbass is curling next to us. Like no joke, 6 inches away from us. Dude slips up and swings a 20 he's holding at friend's head. Throws the bar up and ducks just in time. Almost impale myself trying to catch the bar. Newbie apologizes while friend gets back up and I'm shitting myself still. Tell friend he should go home. Friend looks unfazed and wants to continue. Leave to Abuela's sister house to get some sage and silver. Go back to the gym and give it to friend. Next day, friend looks happier than normal. Tells me some shit went down at his house. Says the power was dead even though his bills were paid and rest of the neighborhood had power. Heard rattling of silverware. Used his flashlight app to see, saw a silhouette of someone crawl under the kitchen counter. Nothing under the counter, not even shelves. Friend doesn't believe in Ouija bullshit and believes it's an intruder or animal. Friend grabs his pull-up bar and gets ready to sweet fit justice. Yells obscenities while patrolling his house. Says he sees what looks like a small humanoid couched in his weight room. Gives 0 fucks and tosses the pull-up bar at the window. Showers it like lanklet kneecaps squatting. Thing nowhere in sight. Friend then starts to consider Ouija shit. Calls other friend for advice. Our lifting group has some odd characters. Johnny answers and tells him to burn sage and carry the silver. Says he'll be by with some holy water. Drops it off. I'll call my grandmother tomorrow to help. She's one of the medium people. Fred sits down on the couch while the house smells like old. Watches American Dad. Looks at the sage. Dried up and out. Goes to pocket for the silver. Fucking melted. Instead of warm, it was cold. Excuse me. Instead of warm, it was cold. Start to see something dart back and forth across the room. TV goes off and static comes on. Says high-pitched screaming fills the house. Make sure you don't say any slurs. Of course not. Broke the rule there, but we'll get back into it. Walks over with the weight room and smashes a skull against the wall in one fluid motion. Like imagine walking into a room, tipping over a vase, and going back to what you were doing. He did that, except he threw a skull against the wall. Says house shook, screaming got higher, then stopped. Lights go on and off again. Hears numerous footsteps getting closer to him. Tells me he's mildly freaked out at this point. I'm very concerned that he said mildly. Says he doused himself in holy water and started swinging as hard as he could into the darkness. Only hears wind breaking his fists. Says he heard footsteps getting further away from him and screams, "Nuh-uh!" Starts running around his house, swinging in the darkness. Fucks up his living room in the process. Tells me he swears he made contact with something fleshy a few times. Doesn't remember falling asleep. Wakes up and goes to the gym and tells me this the next day. Friend goes outside to make frequent calls throughout his routines. Ask him if he's trying to get in touch with a priest. Tells me he's calling his home phone, leaving angry voice messages for the ghosts. Says he would buy a snake just to flatten it with a rolling pin until it dies. Friend goes home again. Fast forward a few days later. Looks completely normal. Asks Johnny if lifting buddy was alright. Tells me it's disturbing how well he's handling the situation. Says he went to lifting buddy's house to check up on the sitch. Feels like a presence, but it feels a presence, but it feels scared. Lifting buddy walks out of his Lifting buddy walks out of his bathroom naked, wiping his ass with a Ouija board towel. Throws it on the floor and kicks it into the living room. Pours more holy water on it and takes it outside to burn. Asks friend if he's hungry. Sure. Says he pulls out an opened Ouija board and bought excuse me. Sometimes these things need better formatting, but says he pulls out an opened Ouija board he bought at Spencer's and uses it as a fucking cutting board. Says he repeatedly stabbed the knife into the board when he was not using it. Breaks the board in half after he was done chopping the tomatoes and throws it in the trash. Washes his hands and then pisses in the trash can. Even I think this is disrespecting the spirits too much. They both eat grilled chicken salad and Johnny leaves. It says on the way out, lifting buddy goes into the lifting room and puts another crucifix on the wall. I'm putting Jesus on this wall and I'll be back to fucking masturbate on my bench press while thinking about Lucifer's poor daughter. Punches a hole in the wall before leaving. Johnny calls his abuela that night. Abuela goes to Lifting Buddy's house with a priest the next day. Says her abuela and the priest were also amazed and disturbed with how Lifting Buddy is fighting the situation. Priest actually cowered and admired Lifting Buddy's pissing naked on the satanic Bible he bought at some shady bookstore. Tells Priest he walks around naked a lot lately and talks shit about Satan. Priest leaves before cleansing. Abuela stays to do her medium thing. Tries to contact the spirits. Says it was a group of entities that were very pissed that their shrine was disturbed. Tells her that they have no power since Lifting Buddy isn't remotely scared of anything they've done. Lifting Buddy walks back into the weight room with a dead snake. Abuela says the entities scatter like roaches. Check out what I found on the street this morning. Takes a bite out of an apple. A fucking dead snake. Throws the snake on the floor. Puts holy water and salt on it. Kicks it into the carpet a few times before peeling it off and throwing it into the trash can in the kitchen. Abuela is what the fucking at this man's mental strength or ignorance. Tries to contact the spirits again. They keep running from her. Finally talks to one. Says they are scared of Lifting Buddy. Ghosts are scared of my bulky friend. Abuela asks what could make them pass on. Says they did black magic to get revenge on some asshole landlord from way back when. Says they had incriminating shit to shame his family within the wall with the skull. Abuela tells Lifting Buddy what he needs to do. Lifting Buddy goes to the weight room, makes the hole in the wall bigger by throwing a 15-pound plate through the wall, finds folder with records of some shit. I'm not lying about any of this, I swear, and especially the next part. Lifting Buddy flips through the papers and wipes his balls with it. Abuela horrified, crumples them up and throws them into the corner of the room. Tells the spirits to piss off, then punches another hole in the wall. Total of 13 holes at this point. Abuela says, "May God have mercy," in Spanish, then leaves. Goes back to Lifting Buddy's house a month later. Amelia goes to her weight room. More holes than wall, destroyed as fuck, but looks like a halo descending from the heavens. The bench press and squatting rack are still there. Tries to contact spirits. Nothing. Smiles and asks my friend if he did what he needed to be done. Again, not lying about any of this. Tells Abuela he uncrumpled the papers and got the address of this bastard. Papers were only from 60 years ago, so the guy was still alive, just old as dust. Finds the address of this guy in some sort of mansion. Knocks on the door wearing a Get Swole You Must Star Wars yoga tank top, board shorts, pink sunglasses, and a backwards Chicago Bulls snapback. Excuse me. Johnny said Lifting Buddy went into a detail about it. Lifting Buddy holds out the papers and asks the person. Lifting Buddy holds out the papers and asks for the person in the paper's name. Hey Dad, someone's here to see you. He has the documents. Lifting Buddy lets himself in and finds the old man in his studies. Who are you? Notices the papers. Where did you get that? Old man tries to grab the papers. Lifting Buddy punches the old man in the face. Dentures fly out. Says it was like some shit out of a movie. Crouches in his face and sets the old man straight Sherlock Holmes style. Guy's son runs in and jumps on Lifting Buddy's back. Lifting Buddy stops mid-sentence, gets the guy down, then gut punches him until he hobbles out of the room and pukes in the hallway. Tells the old man to set shit right or he will be back for blood. Leaves. Fast forward a couple of days. Various cars outside Lifting Buddy's house. Thinks the old man brought some friends to grab his pull bar. Walks outside in his tank top and house shorts. Various families are thanking him by giving him home-cooked foods. Thank him for getting their grandparents' properties back. The documents were apparently deeds swindled out by the old man. Families say the whole "we'll never forget you" spiel and leave. Friend looks at the Tupperware. Nothing but calories and carbs. Cookies, briskets, gumbo. Throws it all away and goes back to lifting in his weight room. See old man's name in the newspaper, see old man's name in the news a few days later. Apparently he was hated by the community for being a dick. Somehow only heard about him now. He doesn't disclose how he died. Don't know if it was from lifting buddy doing more damage than he thought, the ghost getting the revenge, or natural causes. Hasn't had any paranormal problems since then except for one. Says he went to the kitchen for a late night non-cheating snack and saw full body apparitions. They smiled at him. Says he grabbed an apple, head nodded while taking a bite, and walked back to his bedroom. He stops in the hallway and turns around. Holy fuck, you guys are real? Spirits fade away while smiling. Lifting buddy goes to sleep. Lifting buddy still lifts and does insane shit like he always does. No one fucks with him since the ghost punch incident. Ablela admires every time she's around him. And I think the priest told his priest buddies / church because everyone admires and cowers. Again, none of this is made up. No walk the dinosaur trend bullshit. My friend legitimately beat up a bunch of ghosts. And that's it. That is Ghost Puncher. Starting things off. So, let's get chat back up. Chicago Bulls. Well, back in the day, Chicago Bulls were actually something when they had Michael Jordan. But they don't have Michael, so they're a complete joke now. Even then, they were still kind of a joke because all they had was Michael Jordan. Shaq Fu Michael Jordan. Hey, remember when Shaq tried bringing back Shaq Fu again with that scammy game on Kickstarter? Yeah. No one remembers Shaq Fu 2. True, the 95-96 run was a little legendary. Indeed. And that's how we got shit like Space Jam and everything. He was fucking huge. Alrighty. So not that one. We're saving that one for next. Sorry guys, rolling through my archive. Which one is it that we're going to do next? That one's trying too hard. I can already tell. I don't know. Let's dig for another classic. It's short and sweet. Well, not sweet, but you get what I mean. And I bet you all of you guys will know. So, in short, we're going to do Candle Cove. Again, you guys will already know this one. Oh, wait. Ship told me I cannot comprehend how big Shaq is. Shaq is fucking huge. Like, for real. You think you've seen a tall person, but he is fucking huge. I'm 6'2", and he towers above me. Alrighty. So then. Candle Cove. This is read in the form of a forum post. So, let's dig in. Skyshell 33. Subject, Candle Cove. Local kids show? Does anyone remember this show? It's called Candle Cove, and I must have been like 6 or 7. I never found reference to it anywhere, so I think it was a local station around 1971 or 72. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station, but I remember it was on at a weird time, like 4 p.m. Mike Painter, 65. It seems really familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland and was 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove. Was it about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of a cave talking to a little girl. Yes! Okay, I'm not crazy. I remember... Oh, sorry. Skyshell, 33. Yes! Okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls, real low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll. Looked like an antique that didn't belong on the body. I don't remember what station this was. I don't think it was WTSF though. Jaren, 2005. Sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what show you mean, Skyshell. I think Candle Cove only ran for a couple months in 71, not 72. I was 12 and I watched it a few times with my brother. It was channel 58, whatever station that was. My mom would let me switch to it after the news. Let me see what I remember. It took place in Candle Cove and it was about a little girl who imagined herself to be friends with pirates. The pirate ship was called the Laughing Stock, and Pirate Percy wasn't a very good pirate because he got scared too easily. And there was a calliope music constantly playing. Don't remember the girl's name. Janice or Jade or something. Think it was Janice. Skyshell, 33. Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughing Stock in Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face with the lower jaw submerged. It looked like it was swallowing the sea, and it had an awful Ed Wine voice and laugh. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from wooden plastic model to foam puppet version and the head that talked. Mike Painter, 56 or 65. Ha! I remember that too. Do you remember the part Skyshell? You have to go inside. Skyshell, 33. Ugh, Mike, I just got chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in. Like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was. And the camera would push in the Laughing Stock's face with each pause. You have to go inside. With the two eyes askew, a flopping foam jaw, and the fishing line that opened and closed it. Ugh, it looked so cheap and awful. You guys remember the villain? He had a face that was a handlebar mustache above really tall, narrow teeth. Kevin Hart. I honestly thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when the show was on. Nightmare Fuel. Jaren, 2005. That wasn't the villain. The puppet with the mustache. That was the villain's sidekick, Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on top of the mustache. I used to think that I used to think that meant he only had one eye. But yeah, the villain was another marionette, the Skin Taker. I can't believe that they I can't believe what they let us watch back then. Kevin Hart. Jesus H. Christ, the Skin Taker. That kind of kids show where we're watching. Excuse me. Jesus H. Christ, the Skin Taker. What kind of kids show were we watching? I seriously could not look at the screen when the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings. Just a dirty skeleton wearing the brown top hat and cape. And his glass eyes that were too big for his skull. Christ almighty. Skyshell 33. Wasn't the top hat and cloak all sewn up crazily? Was that supposed to be children's skin? Mike Painter, 65. Yeah, I think so. Remember his mouth didn't open and close? The jaw just slid back and forth. I remember the little girl said, "Why does your mouth move like that?" And the Skin Taker didn't look at the girl, but at the camera and said, "To grind your skin." Skyshell 33. I'm so relieved other people remember this terrible show. I used to have this awful memory, a bad dream I had where the opening jingle ended, the show faded in from black, and the characters were there, but the camera was just cutting to each of their faces and they were just screaming. And the puppets and marionettes were flailing spastically. And just all screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying like she had been through hours of this. I woke up many times from the nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it. Kevin Hart. I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode. Skyshell 33. No, not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing in place, crying and screaming for the whole show. Kevin Hart. Maybe I'm manufacturing a memory because you said that, but I swear to God, I remember seeing what you described. They just screamed. Jared 2005. Oh God, yes. The little girl Janice, I remember seeing... Oops, excuse me. The little girl Janice, I remember seeing her shake, and the Skin Taker screaming through his gnashing teeth. His jaw careening so wildly, I thought it would come off the wire hinges. I turned it off, and it was the last time I watched. I ran to tell my brother, and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on. Mike Painter, 65. I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little in the early 70s, when I was 8 or 9. She said she remembered a kids show, Candle Cove. She said she was surprised I could remember that, and I asked why, and she said, "Because I used to think it was so strange that you said, 'I'm going to watch Candle Cove now, Mom.' And then you would tune the TV to Static and just sit and just watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your children's show." Kevin Hart jump scare. Yep, that's Candle Cove. There was a Candle Cove sequel, but it was awful and it turned out to be not canon. So don't expect any more Candle Cove ever. That was like one of the highest rated. So, before we get on to Pen Pals, how are we all feeling tonight in chat? Finishing off my tea there. Alright, I love when creepypastas get continuous that are just so radically fucking different. Continuations that, yeah. Oh God. Y'all fucking remember Jeff the Killer? Ben Drowned is a major offender. Ben Drowned is decent. I think someone tried doing a sequel of that, and that was awful. I would do Ben Drowned, but that relies on external stuff that we'd be watching, and that's a little bit hard to set up. But that is a certified classic, and all the effort that went into it, pretty damn decent. Now then. If we got nothing else, I'll water myself down. Alrighty. Don't be fun. We are now moving on. Oh. That's a little bit hard to set up. Motherfucker, you literally just pull up Firefox OBS screen captures and play YouTube poops on the stream. LMAFAO. I know. I could fucking do that for one of our breaks, too. Because I plan on taking breaks for the 6th part of Pen Pal, like between everyone. Where we catch up on chat and everything. But Pen Pal is kind of like a... Excuse me. Going to be our big boy for tonight, our main feature. And it is a long story. A long, but very good story. And... in fact, we are going to go on to it. So settle in. Actually, I should take a quick bathroom break real quick. So I will be right back in about less than a minute. Alrighty, fellas. We are digging in now. As I say, as I stall for a little bit more time. But, Pen Pals, or Pen Pal, Chapter 1. Footsteps. In a quiet room, if you press your ear against a pillow... Oh wait, here we go. I've never had to tell this story with enough detail to actually explain it all the way, but it is true, and it happened when I was about 6 years old. In a quiet room... excuse me. In a quiet room, if you press your ear against a pillow, you can hear your heartbeat. As a kid, the muffled rhythmic beats sounded like footsteps on a carpeted floor. So as a kid, almost every night, just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I would hear these footsteps, and I would be ripped back into consciousness, terrified. For my entire childhood, I lived with my mother in a fairly nice neighborhood that was in a transitional phase. People of a lower economic means were gradually moving in, and my mother and I were two of these people. We lived in the kind of house you see being transported in two pieces on the interstate. But my mom took good care of it. There were a lot of woods surrounding the neighborhood that I would play in and explore during the day. But at night, as things often do to a kid, they took on a more sinister feeling. This coupled with the fact that due to the nature of our house, there was a fairly large crawl space underneath, filled my mind with imaginary monsters and inescapable scenarios, which would consume my thoughts when I was awoken by the footsteps. I told my mom about the footsteps and she said that I was just imagining things. I persisted enough that she blasted my ears with water from the turkey baster once just to placate me, since I thought it would help. Of course it didn't. Despite all the creepiness and the footsteps, the only weird thing that ever happened was that. Every now and then, I would wake up on the bottom bunk despite having gone to sleep on the top. But this wasn't really weird since I'd sometimes get up to piss or get something to drink and could remember just going back to sleep on the bottom bunk. I'm an only child, so it didn't matter. This would happen once or twice a week, but waking up on the bottom bunk wasn't too terrifying. But one night, I didn't wake up on the bottom bunk. I had heard footsteps, but was too far gone to be woken up by them. And then I was woken. And when I was awoken, it wasn't from the sound of footsteps or a nightmare. It was because I was cold. Really cold. When I opened my eyes, I saw stars. I was in the woods. I sat up immediately and tried to figure out what was going on. I thought I was dreaming, but that didn't seem right. Though neither did me being in the woods. There was a deflated pool float right in the front of me. One of those ones shaped like a shark. This only added to the surreal feeling. But after a while, it seemed like I just wasn't going to wake up because I wasn't asleep. I stood up to orientate myself. But I didn't recognize these woods. I played in the woods by my house all the time, so I knew them really well. But if these weren't the same woods, then how could I get out? I took a step and felt shooting pain in my foot, which knocked me back to where I had just been laying. I had stepped on a thorn. By the light of the moon, I could see that they were everywhere. I looked at my other foot, but it was fine. And as a matter of fact, so was the rest of me. I didn't have another scratch on me, and I wasn't even that dirty. I cried for a little bit, but stood back up. I didn't know which way to go, so I just picked a direction. I resisted the urge to call out since I wasn't sure I wanted to be found by who or what might be out there. I walked for what seemed like hours. I tried to walk in a straight line. I tried to course correct when I had to take detours. But I was a kid, and I was afraid. There weren't any howls or screams, and only once did I hear any noise that scared me. It sounded like a crying baby. I think now that it was just a cat, but I panicked. I ran, veering in different directions to avoid big thicks of bushes and collapsed trees. And I was paying close attention to where I stepped because at that point my feet were in pretty bad shape. I paid too much attention to where I was stepping, but not enough to where those steps were leading, because not long after hearing the cry, I saw something that filled me with a kind of despair I haven't experienced since. It was the pool float. I was only 10 feet from where I had woken up. This wasn't magic or some supernatural space bending. I was lost. Up until that moment, I thought more about getting out of the woods than how I got in. But being back at the beginning caused my mind to swim. I wasn't even sure that these were my woods. I had been hoping that they were. I had run in a huge circle around that spot. Or did I just get turned around and start making my way back? How was I going to get out? At the time, I thought the North Star was just the brightest star. And so I looked and found the brightest star and followed it. Eventually, things started to look more familiar, and then I saw the ditch. A dirt ditch my friends and I would have dirt clod wars in. I knew I had made it out. By that point, I was walking really slowly because my feet hurt so much. But I was so happy to be so close to home. that I broke into a light jog. When I actually saw the roof of my house over a neighboring lower set house, I let out a light sob and ran faster. I just wanted to be home. I had already decided that I wouldn't say anything because I had no idea what I could possibly say. I would get back in the house somehow, clean up, and get in bed. My heart sunk as I rounded a corner and my house was fully into view. Every light in the house was on. I knew my mom was up, and I knew I would have to explain or try to explain where I had been, and I couldn't even figure out where to start. My run became a jog, which became a walk. I saw her silhouette through the blinds, and although I was worried about how to explain things to her, that didn't matter to me at that point. I walked up the couple of steps to the porch and put my hand on the doorknob and turned. Right before I pushed it open, two arms wrapped around me and pulled me back. I screamed as loud as I could, "Mom, help me! Please, Mom!" The feeling of being so close to being safe and being physically pulled away from it filled me with the kind of dread that is, even after all these years, indescribable. The door I had been torn away from opened, and a flash of hope shot through my heart. But it wasn't my mom. It was a man. He was enormous. I thrashed around and kicked at the shins of the person holding me, also trying to get away from the person who had just come out of my house. I was scared, but I was furious. "Let me go! Where is she? Where is my mom? What did you do to her?" As my throat stung from screaming, and I was drawing in another breath, I became aware of the sound that had been present no longer than I had perceived it. "Honey, please, calm down. I've got you." It sounded like my mom. The arms loosened and set me down, and as the man approaching me blocked out the porch light with his head, I noticed his clothes. He was a cop. I turned to face the voice behind me and saw it was really my mom. Everything was okay. I began to cry, and the three of us went inside. "I'm so glad you're home, sweetie. I was worried I'd never see you again." By this point, she was crying too. "I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I just wanted to come home. I'm sorry." "It's okay. Just don't ever do that again. I'm not sure my shins could take it." A little laughter broke through my sobs, and I smiled. "I'm sorry for kicking you. Why'd you have to grab me like that?" "I was just terrified you'd run away again." I was confused. "What do you mean?" "We found your note on your pillow," she said, and pointed to the piece of paper the police officer was sliding across the table. I picked up the note and read it. It was a running away letter. It said that I was unhappy and never wanted to see her or any of my friends again. The police officer exchanged a few words with my mama on the porch while I stared at the letter. I didn't remember writing a letter. I didn't remember anything about any of this. But even if I sometimes went to the bathroom at night and didn't remember, or even if I could have gone into the woods on my own, even if all that could have been true, the only thing I knew at this point was, this isn't how you spell my name. I didn't write this letter. And that was chapter 1. Jasper and Chuck are ready for the spooks. Damn right. Alright. We have approached the end of the first hour. So we are going to take a quick break. A quick 10-minute break just to recover and such. Let's see if we can get a Halloween YouTube poop. Let's see. Oh wait, there is one, a Harry Potter one that came out recently. We could do that. Let's double check my flow and see where it's at. Uh, Alright. Get this. We'll get this out of here. Alrighty. Firefox, are you on? It is not appearing. Oops. Flip my microphone. Oh. We'll just bring it over then. Rubius Hagrid. Nothing scarier than for Halloween than Dracula Flow 3. Dang right. Boost the volume of this a little. So this is Master Poop. He is very, very good with editing.
I should have known that you would be here. Professor Jordan Peterson.
What?
Good evening, Professor Dumbledore.
I'm afraid so, Professor. Hagrid is my wife.
Love always wins indeed. No! Not the Glock! He hit Hagrid! Meanwhile, in that alternate universe... Pizza time.
Always late, huh?
Sorry about that.
Your last chance.
Albus, do you really think it's safe? Leaving him with the master poop. I've watched him all day. He's the worst sort of... You too, Cooper. Imaginable. really innocent.
Exactly.
Cease and desist.
Harold Trotter.
No. Harold Trotter and the boogie flavored one. He can't maintain that scar throughout the entire video.
Get up! Now!
Oh, there he goes.
Why don't you just go into breakfast and try not to cook me anything?
Yes, Aunt Petunia.
I want everything to be perfect.
You had to rush Chuck to the bathroom. We're watching Harold Trotter for our break.
Counted them myself.
66, but last year I said 97. I don't care how big they are.
This is what we're going to do. Is that when we go out, we're going to buy you 2 new pumpkins as a present.
Oh, God. What? There they go. Look, I wasn't ready for the badger because he was me either.
Sorry about him. He doesn't understand what it's like, lying there day after day, watching people press their ugly fat faces in on you. Can you hear me? No.
No.
Wait a minute. You can hear me. You're from Burma, aren't you? Was it nice there?
Burma wasn't nice. Sorry, we missed you. Oh my God! Oh no!
We've been trying to contact you regarding your car's extended warranty for quite some time now. This will be our final attempt to try and reach you.
Fine day, Sunday. In my opinion, best day of the week. Why is that, Dudley?
Because there's no toast on Sundays.
Right you are, Harry.
No toast.
No toast on Sunday.
But he's about to eat toast. What are you?
Bastards today! No, sir. Not one single bloody pigeon. Not one.
Oh no! No, not the Green Goblin! Oh no! He got the Dursleys! Oh, they're alive. It's Hagrid! Dumbledore's husband. Oh no, it's PS2 Hagrid!
Hello, Harry. It's me, Hagrid.
I demand that you leave at once, sir. You are breaking and entering.
Now you listen to me. And I'd just like to say that end it where it is. Then
That was close.
Head enhancement clinic said nobody would notice.
got something for you.
I thought I was going to have to cut the stream before that.
Words and all.
Send nudes?
Sorry, no.
No?
No.
Harry.
Whoa.
You're a woman, Harry.
I'm a what?
What?
Dear pesky plumbers, the couplings and I have taken over the mushroom kingdom.
You'll not be going.
Oh, and I suppose a great fat cunt like yourself's going to stop him, are you?
What?
You heard. And he will be under the finest bastard Hogwarts has ever seen.
I will not pay to have crack sex.
You're fucking sus.
Oh man.
Got it here somewhere. Ha! There's the little devil.
That is a little devil.
Else as well.
Oh, Hagrid, no.
Very well.
Love how I'm watching this with very limited knowledge of Harry Potter, and it's making a million times better than a legit fan. Yeah,
Your dad and parents.
and it's more entertaining than the actual thing. What? Oh no, Harry's dead parents!
Didn't think your mom and dad would leave you with nothing, though, did you? Best not to mention this to anyone, Harry.
Yeah, best not. To current your rave by law, you have at least one Among Us joke in there somewhere. Oh, there he goes.
Perhaps this.
Oh no!
No, definitely not.
Sorry. But what's curious? Seriously.
It is curious that you should be destined for Wade's after all. He who must not be named did your mother.
Now, your train leaves in 10 minutes. Here's your ticket.
That took a second to register. Wonka!
But Hagrid, there must be a stake.
Oh, steak. Why is this so fantastically edited? Master Poop rarely releases his work, so it's an entire event. Like, they take forever. I think that it has been 5 years since his last video. What the?
What? Do you mind? I mean, do you really have the... Yeah?
No, don't do it, Harry. What? No. Happy Meals.
Anything off the trolley, dears? No, thanks. We'll take the lot. George sweared he got a bogey flavoured one once.
Roll credits.
This is Scabbers, by the way. Fred gave me a spell as to turn him yellow. Want to see? No. For example, Oculus Rift.
Hey.
Holy shit. Are you
Well-
sure that's real? Well, it's not very good, is it?
No, it is not. It's a bouncy castle.
No. Before we begin, Professor Dumbledore would like to say a few words.
Few words.
A few words.
When I call your name, you will come forth, and you will lose your head.
Oh.
Harry Potter?
Oh. What?
Difficult, very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. But where to put you? Better be Hufflepuff.
What?
The goblet of fire.
What? God knows when. Accurate. Nice shirt, by the way. Motherfucker goes Scorsese on his projects. Exactly. Alrighty. We are going to head back with that levity break. Let me get some water. Get our music back on. Alrighty. Back to Pen Pal. Second chapter, Balloons. A couple of days ago, a story called Footsteps here on No Sleep. There were a number of questions that made me curious about certain details about my childhood, and so I spoke with my mother. Exacerbated by my questions, she said, "Why don't you just tell them about the goddamn balloons if they're so interested?" As soon as she said that, I remembered so much about my childhood that I've forgotten. This story will provide some greater context to the previous story, which I think you should read first, which we did, though the ordeal is of vital importance. Reading that story first will put your... Alright, we're just going to skip ahead a little bit. When I was 5 years old, I went to an elementary school that, from what I've come to understand, was really adamant about the importance of learning through activity. It was part of a new program designated to allow children to rise at their own pace, and to facilitate this, the school encouraged teachers to come up with really inventive lesson plans. Each teacher was given the latitude to create his or her own themes that would run through the duration of the grade. Can chat up real quick. Alright. Where were we? Each teacher was given the latitude to create his or her own themes, which would run for the duration of the grade. And all these lessons in math, reading, etc. would be designated in this, or designed in the spirit of the theme. These themes were called groups. There was a space group, a sea group, an earth group, and the group which I was in, community. In kindergarten in kindergarten in this country, you don't learn much except how to tie your shoes and how to share. So most of it wasn't very memorable. I only remember two things very clearly. I was the best at writing my name the right way, and the balloon project, which was really the hallmark of the community group, since it was a pretty clever way to show how a community functioned at a really basic level. You've probably heard of this activity. On one Friday, I remember it being a Friday, I was excited about the project, and it being the end of the week, toward the beginning of the year, we walked into the classroom in the morning and saw that there was a fully inflated balloon tied off with a string taped to each of our desks. Sitting on each of our desks was a marker, a pen, and a piece of paper and an envelope. Oops, looks like my Steam is not on do not disturb. We'll just fix that real quick. Alrighty. Where were we? The project was to write on a note on the paper, put it in an envelope, and attach it to the balloon, which we could draw a picture on if we wanted. Most of the kids started fighting over the balloons because they wanted different colors, but I started on my note, which I had thought of a lot about. All the notes had to follow a loose structure, but we were allowed to be creative within those boundaries. My note was something like this. Hi, you found my balloon. My name is Name, and I attend elementary school. Blank elementary school. You can keep the balloon, but I hope you write me back. I like Mighty Max, exploring building forts, swimming, and friends. What do you like? Write me back soon. Here's $1 for the mail. On the dollar I wrote 4 stamps, right across the front, which my mom said was unnecessary, but I thought it was a genius. I thought it was genius, so I did it. The teacher took a Polaroid of each of us with our balloons and had us put in the envelope along with our letter. They also included another letter that I assumed explained the nature of the project and sincere appreciation for everyone's participation in writing back and sending photos of their city or neighborhood. That was the whole idea, to build a sense of community without having to leave the school, and to establish safe contact with our other people. It seemed like such a fun idea. Over the next couple of weeks, the letters started to roll in. Most came with pictures of different landmarks, and each time a letter would come in, the teacher would pin the picture on a big wall map. We had put up showing where the letter had come from and how far the balloon had traveled. It was a really smart idea because we actually looked forward to coming to school to see if we had gotten our letter. For the duration of the year, we had 1 day a week where we could write back to our pen pal or another student's pen pal in case our letter hadn't come in yet. Mine was one of the last to arrive. When I came into the classroom, I looked at my desk and once again didn't see any letter waiting for me. But as I sat down, the teacher approached me and handed me an envelope. I must have looked so excited as I was about to open it. She put her hand on mine to stop me and said, "Please don't be upset." I didn't understand what she meant. Why would I be upset that my letter had come? Initially, I was mystified that she would even know what was in the envelope. But now I realize, of course, the teacher had screened the contents to make sure there was nothing obscene. But all the same, how could I be disappointed? When I opened the letter, I understood. There was no letter. The only thing in the envelope was a Polaroid, but I couldn't merely make out what it was. It looked like a patch of desert. It was too blurry to decipher. It appeared as if the camera had been moved while the picture was being taken. There was no return address, so I couldn't even write back if I wanted to. I was crushed. The school year pressed on, and the letters had stopped coming for nearly all of our other students. After all, you can only continue a written correspondence with a kindergartner for so long. Everyone, including myself, had lost interest in the letters almost completely. And then I got another envelope. My excitement was rejuvenated, and I reveled in the fact that I was still getting a letter when most of the other pen pals had abandoned their involvement. It made sense that I received another delivery. There had been nothing but a blurry picture in the first one, so this was probably to make up for that. But again, there was no letter at all, just another picture. This one was more distinguishable, but I still didn't understand. The photograph was angled way up, catching the top corner of a building, and the rest of the image was distorted by a lens flare from the sun. Because the balloons didn't travel very far, and because they were all launched on the same day, the board became a bit cluttered. And so the policy for the students still exchanging letters became that they could take the photographs home. My best friend Josh had the second highest number of pictures taken home by the end of the year. His pen pal was really cooperative and sent him pictures from all around the neighboring city. Josh took home, I think, 4 pictures. I took home nearly 50. The envelopes were all opened by the teacher, but after a while I stopped even looking at the pictures. However, I saved them in one of my drawers that housed my collections of rocks, baseball cards, comic book cards, Marvel metal cards, and those who might remember, and little miniature baseball batting helmets that I'd get out of the vending machine at Winn-Dixie after t-ball games. With the school year over, my attention turned to other things. My mom had gotten me a small snow cone machine for Christmas that year, and Josh had really coveted it. So much so that his parents bought him a slightly nicer one for his birthday, which was towards the end of the school year. That summer, we had the idea we set up a snow cone stand to make money. We thought we'd make a fortune selling snow cones at $1. Josh lived in a different neighborhood, but we eventually decided that my neighborhood would be better because there are a lot of people who cared for their lawns. The yards in my neighborhood were slightly bigger. We did this for 5 weeks in a row until my mom told us we had to stop. And I've only recently come to understand why she did that. On the 5th weekend, Josh and I were counting our money. Because we both had a machine, we both had a separate stack of money that we put together into one stack and split it evenly. We had made a total of $16 that day. And as Josh paid out my fifth dollar, I had a feeling of profound surprise consume me. The dollar said 4 stamps. Josh noticed my shock and asked if he had miscounted. I told him about the dollar and he said, "That's so cool, man." As I thought about it, I came to agree. The idea that the dollar had made it right back to me after changing so many hands floored me. I rushed inside to tell my mom. My excitement, coupled with her being distracted by a phone call, made my story incomprehensible, and she simply responded, "Oh wow, that's neat." Frustrated, I ran back outside and told Josh I had something to show him. Back in my room, I opened the drawer and took out the stack of envelopes and showed him some of the pictures. I started with the first picture, and we went through about 10 before Josh lost interest and asked if I wanted to play outside in the ditch. A dirt ditch down the street from my house, before his mom came to pick him up. So that's what we did. We had a dirt war for a while, but it was interrupted several times by rustling in the woods around us. There were raccoons and stray cats that lived there, but this was making a little too much noise, and we traded guesses at what it was in an attempt to scare each other. My last guess was that it was a mummy, but in the end, Josh kept insisting that it was a robot because of the sounds that we heard before we left. He got a little serious and looked at me right in the eyes and said, "You heard it, didn't you? It sounded like a robot. You heard it too, right?" I had heard it, and since it sounded mechanical, I agreed that it was probably a robot. And only now that I understand what we heard. When we got back, Josh's mom was waiting for him at the kitchen table with my mom. Josh told his mom about the robot. Our moms laughed and Josh went home. My mom and I ate dinner, and then I went to bed. I didn't stay in bed for too long. before I crept out and decided that, due to the day's events, I would revisit the envelopes, since now the whole affair seemed much more interesting. I looked at the first envelope and set it on the floor, and a set of blurry desert Polaroids on top. I laid the second envelope right next to it, and placed the oddly angled Polaroid of the top of a building's corner, and did this with each picture until it formed a grid that was about 5 by 10. I always I was always taught to be careful with things that I was collecting, even if I wasn't sure if they were valuable. I noticed the pictures became gradually more decipherable. There was a tree with a bird on it, a speed limit sign, a power line, a group of people walking into some building, and then I saw something that vexed me so powerfully that I can now, as I write this, distinctly remember feeling dizzy and capable of only a single repeating thought. Why am I in this picture? In this photograph of the group of people entering the building, I saw myself holding hands with my mother in the very back of the crowd of people. We were at the very edge of the photo, but it was undeniably us, and as my eyes swam over the sea of Polaroids, I became increasingly anxious. It was a really odd feeling. It wasn't fear, it was that feeling you get when you are in trouble. I'm not sure why I was flooded with that feeling, but there I sat, floundering in the distinct sense that I had done something wrong. And the feeling only intensified as I looked on the rest of the photos after the one that had powerfully struck me. I was in every photo. None of them were close shots, none of them were only me, but I was in every single one of them. Off to the side, in the back, bottom of the frame. Some of them only had the tiniest part of my face captured at the very edge of the photo, but nonetheless, I was there. I was always there. I didn't know what to do. Your mind works in a funny ways as a kid. But there was a large part of me that was afraid of getting in trouble simply for still being up. Since I already had a looming feeling of having done something wrong, I decided I would wait until tomorrow. The next day, my mom was off work and spent most of the morning cleaning up around the house. I watched cartoons, I imagine, and waited until I thought it was a good time to show her the Polaroids. When she went out to get the mail, I grabbed a couple of pictures and put them on the table in front of me as I sat waiting for her to come back in. When she returned, she was already opening the mail and threw some junk mail into the trash can. "Mom, can you come here for a second? I have these pictures. Just give me a minute, honey. I need to mark these on the calendar." After a minute or two, she came and stood behind me and asked me what I needed. I could hear her shuffling with the mail behind me, but I just looked at the Polaroids and told her about them. As I explained more and pointed to the pictures, her frequent uh-huhs and okays decreased, and she was suddenly completely quiet and only making a little noise with the mail. The next noise I heard from her sounded as if she was trying to catch her breath in a room that had no air left in it. At last, her struggling gasps were conquered, and she simply dropped the remaining mail on the table and ran to the kitchen to get the phone. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know about these. Don't be mad at me." With the phone pressed to her ear, she was running back and forth and shouting into it. I nervously fiddled with the mail sitting next to my Polaroids. The top envelope had something sticking out of it, and I thought anxiously about it. It was another Polaroid. Sorry, I messed it up. The top envelope had something sticking out of it, and I thoughtlessly and anxiously pulled on it until it came out. It was another Polaroid. Confused, I had thought somehow one of my Polaroids had slipped into the stack when she threw the mail down. But when I turned it over and looked at it, I realized I had not seen this one before. To my dismay, it was me, but this one was much closer shot. I was surrounded by trees and was smiling, but it wasn't just me, I noticed. Josh was there too. This was from yesterday. I started yelling for my mom, who was still screaming into the phone. I repeatedly yelled for her until she finally responded, "What?" And I could only think to ask, "Who are you calling?" "I'm talking to the police, honey." "But why? I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything." She answered me with a response that I never understood until I was forced to revisit these events from the earliest years of my life. She grabbed the envelope off the table and the picture of Josh and I and spun and slid, landing next to the other Polaroids in front of me. She held the envelope up to my eyes, but I could only look at her and watch as the color began draining from her face. With tears welling up from her eyes, she said that she had to call the police because there was no postmark. God damn, this is making my night. My morning was absolutely dreadful, but this is making it so much better. We got a lot more to go, buddy. Gordfox, he didn't hear a robot. He heard the animatronic Freddy Fazbear. Freddy Fazbear, Party Creek. Alrighty. So, that was chapter 2. It sure of set the stage a bit more. We'll be moving on to chapter 3, and that's going to be the halfway point of these stories. How has it been an hour and a half already? Time flies when you're having fun, baby boy. We're probably going to go on for 5 hours. As long as I can possibly do. But that's our goal. 5 hours. Tradition. And as we pass midnight. It's Streetcar named Anathema. Howdy, boy, or girl, or whoever you are. You're fun. Wink. Ah. So, anybody got guesses why an envelope without a postmark or a stamp would cause some suspicion to rise? Think about that while we go on to part 3. I'll be here as long as I can, and I'll probably have this as the background when I go to bed. Good. Get comfortable. Get your Wawa. Get a nice pillow. Because we're still going to be here for a bit. Obviously, someone doesn't know how to send mail properly. I guess it'd have to be hand delivered, right? I think Generic's got it. So, let's continue on to part 3. Boxes. For me, I apologize. I said several times. Footsteps. Was it true? The events of the following story are recesses of my mind. Skipping a bit so we don't have to retread. Memory is due to the fact that I think I showed good judgment. What follows is an accurate recollection as I could manage. I apologize for the length. I spent the summer before my first year of elementary school learning how to climb trees. There was one particular pine tree right outside my house that seemed almost designed for me. It had branches that were so low I could easily grab them without a boost. And for the first couple of days, after I first learned how to pull myself up, I would sit in the lowest branch, dangling my feet. The first tree was outside of our back fence and was easily visible from the kitchen window, which was just above the sink. Before too long, my mother and I had developed a routine where I would go play on the tree when she washed the dishes because she could easily see me while she did other things. As the summer passed, my abilities grew, and before long, I was climbing fairly high. As the tree got taller, its branches not only got thinner, but more widely spaced. I eventually reached a point where I couldn't actually climb any higher. And so the game had changed. I began to concentrate on speed. And in the end, I could reach the highest branch in 25 seconds. I got too confident after one afternoon. I tried to step on a branch before I had firmly grasped the next one. I fell about 20 feet and broke my arm really bad in 2 places. My mom was running toward me and yelling, My mom was running toward me, yelling, and I remember her sounding like she was underwater. I don't remember what she said, but I do remember being surprised by just how white my bone was. I was going to start kindergarten with a cast and wouldn't even have any friends to sign it. My mom must have felt terrible because the day before I started school, she brought home a kitten. He was just a baby and was striped with a tan and white. As soon as she put him down, he crawled into an empty case of soda that was sitting on the floor. I named him Boxes. Boxes was only an outside cat when he escaped. My mom had him declawed so he wouldn't destroy the furniture, so as a result, we did our best to keep him inside. He'd only get out every now and then, and we'd find him somewhere in the backyard chasing some kind of bug or lizard. Though he could hardly ever catch one because he had no front claws. He was pretty evasive, but we'd always catch him and carry him back inside. He'd scramble to look back over my shoulder. I told my mom that it was because he was planning his strategy for next time. Once inside, we'd give him some tuna fish, and he came to learn what the sound of the can opener might signal. He'd come running whenever he heard it. This conditioning came in handy later because towards the end of our time in the house, Boxes would get out much more often and would run under the house into the crawl space where neither of us wanted to follow because it was cramped and probably crawling with bugs and rodents. Ingeniously, my mom thought to hook the can opener to an extension cord out back and run it right outside the hole that Boxes had gone through. Eventually, he would emerge with his loud meows, looking excited by the sound of and then horrified at how we could run such a cruel ruse on him. A can opener with no tuna made no sense to Boxes. The last time he escaped under the house was actually our last day in it. My mom had put the house on the market, and we had begun packing our things. We didn't have much, and we stretched the packing out for a while. Though I had already packed up my clothes in my closet Though I had already packed up my clothes at my mom's request, my mom could tell I was really sad about moving and wanted to transition smooth for me. And I guess she thought that having my clothes in the box would reinforce the idea that we were moving, but things wouldn't change that much. When Boxes got out, as we were loading some things into the moving van, my mom cursed because she had already packed the can opener and wasn't sure where it was. I pretended to go look for it so I wouldn't have to go into the house. And my mom, probably completely aware of my little scam, moved one of the panels and crawled in. She came out with Boxes pretty quickly and seemed pretty unnerved, which made me feel even better about getting out of it. My mom made some phone calls while I packed a little more, and she came into my room and told me that she had spoken to the realtor and we were going to start moving into the other house that day. She said it like it was excellent news, but I had thought we had more time in the house. She originally said we weren't moving until the end of next week, and it was only Tuesday. What's more, we weren't completely finished packing, but my mom said sometimes it's just easier to replace things than pack them and haul them all over the city. I didn't even get to grab the rest of my boxed clothes. I asked if I could call Josh to say bye, but she said that we could just call him from our new house. We left in the moving van. I managed to stay in touch with Josh for years, which was surprising since we no longer went to the same school, but our parents weren't close friends. But they knew that we were, and so they would accommodate our desire to see one another by driving us back and forth for sleepovers, sometimes every weekend. For Christmas one year, our parents even pooled their money and got us really nice walkie-talkies that were advertised to work across a range that extended past the distance between our houses. They also had batteries that could last for days if the walkie-talkies was on but not used. They would only occasionally work well enough that we could talk across the city, but when we stayed over, we'd use them around the house, talking in mock radio speak that we had taken from movies, and they worked great for that. Thanks to our parents, we were still friends when we were 10. One weekend, I was staying at Josh's, and my mom called to say goodnight. She was still pretty watchful, even when she couldn't actually watch me. But I had gotten so used to it that I didn't even notice, even if Josh did. She sounded upset. Boxes was missing. This must have been a Saturday night because I had spent the night at Josh's, and excuse me, need a sip. There we go. This must have been a Saturday night because I had spent the night at Josh's the previous night and was going to go home the next day because we had school on Monday. Boxes had been missing since Friday afternoon. I gathered that she had not seen him since returning home after dropping me off. She must have decided to tell me he was missing because if he didn't come home before I did, I would be devastated at not only his absence, but how she could have kept it from me. She told me not to worry. He'll come back, he always does. But Boxes didn't come back. 3 weekends after I stayed at Josh's again, I was still upset about Boxes. But my mom told me that there had been many times when pets had disappeared from home for weeks or even months only to return on their own. She said they always knew where the home was and would always try to get back. I was explaining this to Josh when a thought hit me so hard that I interrupted my own sentence to say it out loud. What if Boxes thought of the wrong home? Josh was confused. What? He lives with you. He knows where his home is. But I grew up somewhere else, Josh. He was raised in my old house a couple neighborhoods away. Maybe he still thinks that place as home like I do. Oh, I get it. Well, that'd be great. We'll tell my dad tomorrow, and he'll take us over so we can take a look. No, he won't, man. My mom said we couldn't ever go back to that place because the new owners wouldn't want to be bothered. She said that she told your mom and dad the same thing. Josh persisted. Okay then, just go exploring. We'll just go exploring tomorrow and make our way to your old house. No, if we get spotted, your dad will find out, and then so will my mom. We have to go there ourselves. We have to go there tonight. It didn't take that much convincing to get Josh on board, since he was usually the one to come up with these ideas like this. But we never stuck out of the house before. It actually turned out to be incredibly easy. The window in his room opened to the backyard, and he had a latched wooden fence that wasn't locked. After those 2 minor hurdles, we slipped off into the night, flashlight and walkie-talkies in hand. There were 2 ways to get from Josh's house to my old house. We could walk on the street and make all the turns to go through the woods, which would take us half the time. It would have taken about 2 hours to walk there taking the street, but I suggested we go that way anyways. I told him it was because I didn't want to get lost. Josh refused and said that if we were seen that they might recognize him and tell his dad. He threatened just to go home if we didn't just take the shortcut, and I accepted because I didn't want to go by myself. Josh didn't know what about the last time I walked through these woods at night. The woods were much less creepy with a friend and a flashlight, and we were making pretty good time. I wasn't entirely sure where we were, but Josh seemed confident enough, and that bolstered my morale. We passed through a particularly thick patch of tangled trees when the strap on my walkie-talkie got caught on a branch. Josh had the flashlight, and so I was struggling to get my walkie-talkie free, and Josh said, "Hey man, wanna go for a swim?" I looked over, and he was shining the flashlight, though I closed my eyes as I did because I knew where we were. He was pointing at the pool float. This was where I had woken up in the woods all those years ago. I felt a lump in my throat, the sting of fresh tears in my eyes as I continued to struggle with the walkie-talkie. Frustrated, I yanked hard enough to break it free and turned and walked to Josh, who had partially laid down on the pool float in a mock sunbathing pose. As I walked towards him, I stumbled and nearly fell in a fairly large hole that was sitting in the middle of this small clearing. But I regained my balance and stopped right at its edge. It was deep. I was surprised by the size of the hole, but more surprised by the fact that I didn't remember it. I realized it must not have been there that night because it was the same spot I had awoken. I put it out of my mind and turned to Josh. "Quit messing around, man. You saw I was stuck over there, and you were just laying here joking around on this float?" I punctuated the sentence with a kick at the exposed part of the float. A screeching rose from it. Josh's smile inverted and suddenly looked terrified and was struggling to get off the float, but he couldn't in a quick manner, due to the awkward way he had been laying. Each time he would fall back on the float, the screeching would intensify. I wanted to help Josh, but I couldn't move myself any closer. My legs wouldn't cooperate. I hated these woods. I picked up the flashlight that he had thrown in his thrashing and shined it on the float, not knowing what to expect. Finally, Josh got off the float and rushed next to me. Looked at where I was shining the light. Suddenly, there it was. It was a rat. I started laughing nervously as we both watched the rat run into the woods, taking the screeches with it. Josh lightly punched me in the arm, the smile slowly returning to his face, and we continued walking. We quickened our pace and made it out of the woods faster than we thought we would. And we found ourselves in the backyard of my old neighborhood. The last time I had rounded the bend ahead, I had seen the house fully illuminated, and all the memories of what transpired came flooding back. I felt a skipping in my heart as we were finally turning the corner and about to turn. I felt a skipping in my heart as we were finally turning the corner and about to face the full view of my house. Remembering last time, how incandescent it was. But this time all the lights were off. From a distance, I could see my old climbing tree, and as my mind traced the steps of causality backward, I realized that I wouldn't be back here this night if the tree hadn't grown. And I was briefly in awe of how all the events were like that. As we got closer, I could see the lawn looked terrible. I couldn't even guess when it was last mowed. One of the shutters had partially broken loose and was rocking back and forth in the breeze. And over all the house just looked dirty. I was sad to see my old home in such a state of disrepair. Why would my mom care if we bothered the new owners? if they cared so little about where they lived. And then I realized there were no new owners. The house was abandoned, though it looked simply forsaken. Why would my mom lie to me about our house having new people in it? But I thought that this was actually a good thing. It would be easier to look around for boxes if we didn't have to worry about being spotted by the new family. This would make it much quicker. Josh interrupted my thoughts as we walked through the gate up to the house itself. Your old house sucks, dude, Josh yelled as quietly as he could. Shut up, Josh. Even like this, it's still nicer than your house. Hey, man. Okay, I think boxes is probably underneath the house. One of us has to go under and look, but the other should stay next to the opening in case he comes running out. Are you serious? There's no way I'm going under there. It's your cat, man. You do it. Look, I'll game you for this, unless you're scared, I said, holding my fist over my upturned palm. Fine. Well, we go on shoot, not 3. It's rock, paper, scissors, shoot, not 1, 2, 3. I know how to play the game, Josh. You're the one who's always messes up. And it's 2 out of 3. I lost. I wiggled loose the panel that my mom would always move when she had to crawl under here for boxes. She only had to do it a couple of times since the can opener trick usually worked. But when she had to do it, she hated it, especially that last time. And as I looked into the darkness of the crawl space, I had a greater appreciation of why. Before we moved, she said that it was actually better that boxes ran under here, despite how hard it could be to get him out. It was less dangerous for him than jumping over the fence and running around the neighborhood. All that was true, but I was still dreading doing this. I grabbed the flashlight and the walkie-talkie and began to crawl in. A powerful smell overtook me. It smelled like death. I turned on my walkie. Josh, are you there? This is Macho Man, come back. Josh, cut it out. There's something wrong down here. What do you mean? It stinks. It smells like something died. Is it boxes? I really hope not. I set down the walkie-talkie and moved the flashlight around as I crawled forward. Looking through the hole from the outside, you could see all the way back with the right lighting. But you had to be inside to see the support blocks that held up the house. I'd say that there were about 40% of that area you could see unless you were actually in the crawl space. But even inside, I discovered that I could only see directly where the flashlight was pointing. I realized that this would make scouting around the place much more difficult. As I moved forward, the smell intensified. The fear was growing in me that boxes had come here and something had happened to them. I shined the flashlight around but couldn't see much of anything. I wrapped my fingers around a support block and pulled myself forward. As I did, I felt something that made my hand recoil. Fur. My heart sank as I prepared myself emotionally for what I was about to see. I crawled slowly so I could prolong what I knew was coming, and I inched my eyes and the flashlight past the block to see the other side. I staggered back in horror. Jesus Christ! Escaped my trembling mouth as a hideous, twisted creature badly decomposed. Its skin rotted on its face, so the teeth appeared enormous, and the smell was unbearable. What is it? Are you okay? Is it boxes? I reached for the walkie. No, it's not boxes. What the hell is it? I don't know. I shined the light on it and looked around with less fear in my vision. I chuckled. It's a raccoon. Well, keep looking. I'm going to go into the house to see if I have made it in somehow. What? No, Josh, don't go in there. What if Boxes is down here and runs out? He can't. I put the board back. I looked back and saw that that he was telling the truth. Why did you do that? Don't worry, man. You can move it easily. This makes more sense. If boxes ran out and I missed him, then he'd be gone. If he's down there, then grab him tight and I can come back or come move the board around. And if he's not there, and if he's not, then you can move it out yourself while I look in the house. Some of his points were good, but I doubted he'd be able to get in anyway. Okay, but be careful and don't touch anything. There's a bunch of my old clothes still in boxes in my room. You can look in there and see if he crawled in one. And make sure to bring your walkie. Roger that, good buddy. I realized that it would be a pitch black in there. The power would have been turned off since no one was paying a bill. With any luck, he'd be able to see the street lights, or see from the street lights that might cast some light inside. Otherwise, I'm not sure what he'd do. Before too long, I heard footsteps right over my head. Felt dirt raining down on me. Josh, is that you? Shh, breaker. This is Macho Man coming back for the big Tango Foxtrot. The Eagle has landed. What's your 20, Princess Jasmine? Over. Asshole. Macho Man, my 20 is in your bedroom looking at your stash of magazines. Looks like you have a thing for dudes' butts. What's the report on that? Over. I could hear him laughing without the walkie-talkie, and I started laughing too. I heard footsteps fade away a little. He was on his way to my room. Man, it's dark in here. Hey, you sure you had boxes of clothes in here? I don't see any. Yeah, there should be a couple boxes in the closet. There aren't any boxes in here. Let me check and see if you put them in the boxes in your closet before you left. I started thinking that maybe my mom had come back and gotten the clothes and just given them away because I had outgrown a lot of them. But I remember leaving boxes there. I didn't even have time to close the last one up before we left. While I was waiting for Josh to tell me what he found, I kicked my leg, which started falling asleep because of the position I was in, and hit something. I looked back and saw something really strange. It was a blanket, and all around it were bowls. I crawled a little closer, and the blanket smelled moldy, and most of the bowls were empty, but one had something that I recognized in it. Cat food. It was a different kind than we give boxes, but I suddenly understood. My mom had set up a little place for boxes to encourage him to come here instead of running around the neighborhood. That made a lot of sense, and it seemed even more likely that boxes would come back to this place. That's so cool, Mom, I thought. I found your clothes. Oh, cool. Where were the boxes? Like I said, no boxes. Your clothes were in your closet. They're hanging up. I felt a chill. This was impossible. I had packed all my clothes, even though we weren't supposed to move for another 2 weeks when we left. I remember packing them and thinking that it was stupid for me to have to get clothes out of the box and put them back in. I packed them, but someone had hung them back up. Why though? Josh needed to get out of there. That can't be right, Josh. They're supposed to be in boxes. Stop messing around. Just come back outside. No joke, man. I'm looking at them. Maybe you thought you left them? Ha, wow. You sure like to look at yourself, don't you? What do you mean? Your walls, man. Your walls are covered in Polaroids of yourself. There are hundreds of them. What did you hire some to... Silence. I checked my walkie to see if I had switched it off somehow. It was fine. I could hear footsteps but couldn't tell exactly where Josh was going. I waited for Josh to finish his sentence, thinking that his finger had slipped off the just slipped off the button. But he didn't continue. He seemed to be stomping around in the house now. I was just about to radio him when he came back. There's someone in the house. His voice was hushed and broken, but I could hear him on the verge of tears. I wanted to respond, but how loud was his walkie turned on? What if the other person heard it? I said nothing and waited for him. What I heard were footsteps. Heavy, dragging footsteps. Then a loud thud. Oh God, Josh! He had been found. I was sure of it. This person had found him and was hurting him. I broke out in tears. He was probably my only friend, next to boxes. And then I realized, what if Josh told him I was under here? What could I possibly do? As I struggled to compose myself, I thankfully heard Josh's voice through the walkie. He's got something, man. It's a bag. He just threw it on the floor. Oh God, man. The bag. I think it just moved. I was paralyzed. I wanted to run home. I wanted to save Josh. I wanted to go for help. I wanted so many things. But I just lay there, frozen. As I lay unable to move, my eyes focused on the corner of the house that was right under my room. I moved my flashlight and my breath catched at what I saw. Animals. Dozens of them. Dead. All of them dead. They lay in piles all around a perimeter of the crawl space. Could boxes be among those corpses? Was this what that cat food was for? Seeing this broke my shock, and I knew I had to get out of there, and I scrambled to the board. I pushed on it, but it wouldn't budge. I couldn't move it because it was wedged there, and I couldn't get my fingers around it since the edges were outside. I was trapped. God damn you, Josh, I whispered to myself. I could feel thunderous footsteps above me. The house was shaking. I heard Josh scream, and it was matched by another scream that wasn't full of fear. As I continued pushing, I felt the board move. I knew it wasn't me who was moving it. I could hear footsteps above me and in front of me, and the shouting and screaming filling the brief silences between the footsteps. I moved back and held my walkie ready to defend myself, but the board was thrown to the side and one arm shot to grab me. Let's go, man, now! It was Josh, I thanked God. I scrambled out of the opening, holding the flashlight and the walkie. When we got out to the fence, we both jumped it, but Josh's walkie fell. He reached for it, and I told him to forget it. We had to move. Behind us, I could hear yelling, though they weren't words, only sounds, and we perhaps foolishly ran for the woods to get back to Josh's quicker and be somewhat harder to follow. The whole way through the woods, Josh kept yelling, "He took my picture! He took my picture!" But I knew the man already had Josh's picture from all those years ago at the dish. I suppose Josh still thought those mechanical sounds were from a robot. We made it back to Josh's house and back into his room before his parents woke up. I asked him about the big bag and if it really moved, and he said he couldn't be sure. He kept apologizing about dropping the walkie at the house, but obviously it wasn't a big deal. We didn't go to sleep and kept peering at the window and waiting for him. I went home later that day, and it was about 3 a.m. already. I told my mom the basics of the story a couple days ago. She broke down and was furious about the danger I put myself in. I asked her why she made up all those things about bothering the new owners to stop me from going. Why did she think the house was so dangerous? She became irate and hysterical, but she answered my question. She grabbed my hand, squeezed it harder than I thought her capable of, and locked her eyes to mine, whispering as if she was afraid to be overheard. Because I never put any fucking blankets or bowls under the house for boxes. You weren't the only one to find them. I felt dizzy. I understood so much now. I understood why she had looked so uneasy after she brought boxes out from under the house on our last day there. She found more than spiders and rats' nests that day. I understood why we left almost 2 weeks early. I understood why she tried to stop me from going back. She knew. She knew he had made his home under ours, and she kept it from me. I left without saying a word and didn't finish the story for her. but I want to finish it here for you. I got home from Josh's that day. I threw my stuff on the floor, and it scattered everywhere. I didn't care. I just wanted to sleep. I woke up around 9 p.m. to the sound of boxes meowing. My heart leapt, and he had finally come home. I was a little sick about the fact that if I had just waited a day, none of this previous night's events would have ever happened, and I'd have boxes anyways. But that didn't matter. He was back. I got off my bed and called for him, looking around to catch the glint of light from his eyes. The crying continued, and I followed it. It was coming from under the bed. I laughed a little, thinking I had just crawled under the house looking for him, and this was so much better. His meows were being muffled by a shirt, so I flung it aside and smiling, yelling, "Welcome home, Boxes!" His cries were coming from my walkie-talkie. Boxes never came home. Alrighty, that was part 3, and we are already on hour 2. Gord, let's see. I'll be here as long. Alright. Obviously, someone doesn't know how to send mail properly. Shooketh. Indeed. That took a bit of a darker turn. That you guys are kind of getting. Why I want to read you guys this one for so long. It is very well written. Now then, let's take another quick break. And we'll pull up another video for our entertainment. I see Tack Dagger upload more parts of his YTPMV. He's an amazing like a music maker. I don't think we can do all the parts of it tonight because it runs the entire length of a King of the Hill episode. So we'll still find something else. Let's see. Might have to actually consult my watch later. Oops. Not finding it here. NPC Carlson should have had something uploaded recently. Yep. All right. Get Firefox back up.
You're an idiot, JD.
Oh, yes, I am, Kim.
NPC Carlson makes great YouTube poops and he puts them out regularly.
You're so awesome, JD.
King of the Hill episode length is my favorite unit of measurement. Well, because he does music videos of King of the Hill episodes, and they're fantastic. But I don't think we can actually do that ourselves, but this came out 6 days ago.
Dr. Carter.
But there's a new one that's coming out probably tomorrow. Or 6 hours ago, actually, yeah. Yep, 6 hours. This was one he was making.
Last shift before starting her new career in the muffin factory.
Can't believe
Muffin Factory.
muffins.
I love Hank of the Hill. Same here.
Muffins.
That is many muffins.
I want some muffin.
Elliot,
I want a muffin.
Administration is right here.
on the upside, my pregnant girlfriend was in a coma.
Where am I?
You're out of hospital.
Do you have any family you want us to contact?
Uh-oh.
Luigi.
Cash. Okay,
Hiya.
Your skinner's wiggly.
Yeah? Well, you're gay.
Man, he got that kid.
Mother sleeps with men. I've seen it.
Who can tell me anything about
Dane Cook.
what's his house at his house?
That answer was either very stupid or very stupid. Either way, I'm stupid. Here's the bad news. This isn't real life. This is a TV show. There are
My favorite YouTube poop shit post trope is make them scream really long. It is a good one.
I wanted to give you
That or sus.
Yeah, I don't see that happening, Bobby. That's not how it works. Now I want you to suck it, and then I give you your paycheck. That's how it works. Nos Espinosa, mio Spinoza, mi sus, sus. No. Oh! I can't do it.
What?
I can't do it.
why?
I can't do it.
Wow.
Because her husband is orange.
Oh no, Orange Man, bad.
Oh my god.
I wasn't finished.
Hey, is that
My
Neil Flynn?
God.
Hi there, Fuzzball. Looks like you could use a nuke if you're interested. I invented a machine that invents machines.
That's already been invented.
Dr. Reed, I thought I would just say fuck off, but I won't. Bye.
Why?
Oh my God, he murdered him.
Okay, we have a 1-year-old male who is as game as my balls. Who can
I got an idea.
Ain't nothing but a heartache.
correct.
Mr. Meliason might be a vegetarian. He's always eating babies.
Yellow, blue, red, green, orange.
Pink! If you want to work, go home.
Kudos, Keith, on finally coming.
What
The
the
only thing worse than not knowing why a patient is crashing is being offered help by crashing.
Ah, here's Dr. Cox. He's one of my cocks. Oh. Megalo. Oh.
You love spaghetti. You had some just last night, didn't you?
No. Hi.
We're getting a little old to be having sex.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm just playing man.
Plan B. Let's just dance.
My stream lagged, and when it refreshed, I saw Dr. Cox and Poppy's playtime screen. Oh my God.
Acapella music is.
That was well done.
The
Oh.
only thing worse than being offered help by crashing is being offered help by banjo.
Oh my God.
You usually have to go to a Van Gogh convention to see art of this quality.
Gotta confess, though, I cheated a little bit. I used a machine.
Oh.
Not on his Crocs.
Be careful.
Hey, Elliot, you gonna finish that muffin? That muffin? Oh man, you ever gonna run out of muffins?
No, because I work at the muffin factory.
Hey, just killed me. Do it.
Bullseye!
What?
carrots turn you red and tomatoes turn you blue, what color would he turn if he were to gorge himself on beef?
Purple?
No. I understand that you are confused as to why Barbie has private parts.
I have a vagina.
Kelso's the one being sus.
Well, that shirt you're wearing is
Nice.
Rough, I'm Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. Ever heard of it?
I have.
Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, also known as suckamycopathy, also known as
Suck-my-cockathy?
is when a severe emotional trauma triggers a fart. You indicated that she was disgusting, yet I noticed she was wearing a cock ring.
What?
I've seen it! I'm betting that she was passing gas and her husband just died. And no, I'm not Superman. I'm just Dr. Carter. Thanks the cocks.
I can't believe you can have a heart failure just from being a failure. I mean, how are you supposed to treat that?
It's been one of those days.
Well, they keep killing him.
I wonder what's for dinner.
Well then. That was something, wasn't it? Alrighty. Let's get our music back up. I'm going to extend this break a little bit because I need to use the bathroom again. I'm consuming a lot of water just to keep up. So, give me a couple minutes and I'll be right back. Fuck you, weeb. I'm not diabetic. I went to the doctor for this. However, I was dangerously low on potassium. Like to the point where, oh my god, if you don't eat a banana, you're going to die. Anywho, be back. Alright, I am back. Bananas don't have that much potassium. That's just how little potassium I had in my body. Like, I needed at least a little bit because my water retention was fucking nothing. Imagine not eating a single banana ever. Fucking weakling, you will not survive winter. Bananas are gross! Bananas and string beans, string beans are fucking nasty. I literally gag biting into any of them. My gag reflex just triggers super hard that I actually vomit. I don't know why, but it's those two only. Like, I could eat rattlesnake and be completely fine. They're okay. They aren't amazing, but like cornflakes, they're okay. I still can't eat them. Like with nothing with a banana I can eat. And green beans too. Like, I could eat snail, I could eat rattlesnake, I could eat a fucking whole bunch of other things. But bananas and green beans? Fucking no. Also, snail is fucking overrated. It's not good. Because you can't really put salt on it, otherwise it shrivels up. There's a lot of shit I can't eat. I fucking hate raw onions and pickles. Oh, man. I love raw onions. You know, I was on a dare one time when I was in high school. Someone dared me to eat this onion that we were like, I don't remember the situation where we got the onion. I think like someone just accidentally put it in their bag and brought it to school. And so like I was dared to eat the onion. Or like take a bite out of it. So I did, and I just ended up eating the onion. It was stupid and weird, but it was funny. And I actually enjoyed it. I don't know. Anyone who eats raw onions in a stone's throw away from literal Wario status. That's garlic. Wherever I can eat raw garlic too. I fucking love garlic. I don't mind the taste of onions, but it's the texture I can't stand, especially in like noodles or on a burger, where the stuff is supposed to be soft and chewy and there's a crunch. How raw are we talking, Gord? Like literally just cut open the outer layer and just bite in. That's that kind of raw. Onions are a stone throw away from garlic, so I'm still right. You are a butt? But I would say onion salt is actually really good. It's like regular salt, except it's got a little bit of sweetness from the onion. So it like makes like a really good combination. And you pair that with white pepper, which is like it's like a more mild regular pepper. It's nice. But I'm going to put a pin in it from there. Get another sippy. Oh, wait. Oh, maybe BRB again, because I need to refill my water. I need to keep my throat lubricated, boys. If you buy an onion from a farmer's market, peel it out an hour later and bit into it raw. Well, another thing I hate when getting Chinese food is bean sprouts that they blend into the food noodles and getting crunch. It sucks. I don't like bean sprouts either, but it doesn't trigger my gag reflex. Sorry, boys, I'm just filling my water from a distance. Alrighty, we are back. Wet yourself, fuck you! It's not that gross. I literally had some in a salad like a week ago, like an hour ago. I will need to freshen my breath afterwards. Yeah, was it gross to eat? No, not at all. You had bean sprouts in your salad? Okay, whatever. We're back to it. Alright, we're on chapter 4. Maps. Most old cities and neighborhoods in them weren't planned with the thought of the population would begin to grow exponentially, and it would have to be accommodated to. The layout of the roads is generally originally in response to geographical restrictions and the necessity of connecting points of economic importance. Once the connecting roads are established, new businesses and roads are positioned strategically along the existing skeleton. And eventually the paths carved into the earth are immortalized in asphalt, leaving room only for minor modifications, additions, and alterations, but never drastic change. My childhood neighborhood must have been old. If straight lines move as the crow flies, then my neighborhood must have been built based on the travels of a snake. The first houses built must have been placed around the lake, and gradually an inhabitable area increased as new extensions were built off the original path. But these new extensions all ended abruptly at one point or another. There was only one entrance/exit from the entire neighborhood. Many of these extensions were limited by tributary which both fed and drank from the lake and passed right by what I came to call, and have called these other stories, the ditch. Many of the original homes had enormous yards, but some of those original plots have been divided, leaving properties with smaller and smaller boundaries. The aerial view of my neighborhood would give one the impression that an enormous squid had once died in the woods, and some adventuring entrepreneur found the corpse and paved roads over its tentacles, only to withdraw his involvement and leave time, greed, and desperation to divide up the land among prospective homeowners like an embarrassing attempt at the golden ratio. From my porch you could see the old houses that surrounded the lake. But the house of Mrs. Maggie was my favorite. She was, as best as I can remember, around 80 years old, but despite that she was one of the friendliest people I had ever met. She had a head of loose set white curls that always wore light dresses with floral patterns. She would talk to me and Josh from her back porch when we were swimming in the lake, and she would always invite us in for snacks. She said that she was lonely because her husband, Tom, was always away on business, but Josh and I would always decline her invitation because, as nice as Mrs. Maggie was, there was still something odd about her. Every now and then, when we would swim away, she would say, "Chris, John, you're welcome back anytime." And we could hear her still yelling that when we were walking back to my house. Mrs. Maggie, like many of the older homeowners, had a sprinkler system that was on a timer, though at some point over the years her timer must have been broken, because the sprinklers would come on at various points during the day and often even not at night all year. While it never got cold enough to snow very much, several times each winter I would go outside in the morning and see Mrs. Maggie's yard transform into a surreal Arctic paradise by the frozen water. Every other yard stood sterilized by dry by the biting frost of the cold, but right there in the middle of the bleak reminder of the savagery of the season was an oasis of beautiful ice hanging like stalactites from every branch of every tree and every leaf of every bush. As the sun rose, it reflected off each piece of the ice splintered. As the sun rose, it reflected off, and each piece of the ice splintered the sun into a rainbow that would only be viewed briefly before it blinded you. Even as a child, I was struck by how beautiful it was, and often Josh and I would go over there to walk over the ice grass and have sword fights with the icicles. I once asked my mom why she left it on like that. My mom seemed to search for an explanation before she said, "Well, sweetie, Mrs. Maggie is sick a lot. And sometimes when she gets really sick, she gets confused. That's why she messes up yours and Josh's names sometimes. She doesn't mean to, but sometimes she just can't remember. She lives in that big house all by herself, so it's okay if you talk to her when you swim in the lake. But when she invites you in, you should keep saying no. Be polite, her feelings won't get hurt. But she'll be less lonely when her husband comes home, though, right? How long will he be away on business? It seems like he's always away." My mom seemed to struggle, and I could see that she had become very upset. Finally, she answered, "Honey, Tom's not coming home. Tom's in heaven. He died years and years ago, but Mrs. Maggie doesn't remember. She gets confused and forgets, but Tom's not ever coming home. If someone moved back in with her, she might even think it was Tom, but he's gone, sweetie." I would have only been around 5 or 6 when she told me that. But while I didn't understand it completely, I was still profoundly sad for Mrs. Maggie. I no doubt that Mrs. Maggie had Alzheimer's. She and her husband Tom had 2 sons, Chris and John. The two had worked out payment plans with the utility companies and paid for Mrs. Maggie's water and electricity, but they would never visit her. I don't know if something happened between them, or if it was all the illness, or if they just lived too far away, but they never came around. I have no idea what they looked like, but there were times that when Mrs. Maggie must have thought Josh and I looked like they did when they were children, or maybe she saw what some part of her mind so desperately wanted to see, ignoring the images transmitted down through her optic nerve, and just for a little while showing her what she used to be. I realized only now how lonely she must have been. During the summer after kindergarten, before the events of balloons, Josh and I had taken to exploring the woods near my house, as well as the tributary of the lake. We knew that the woods between our houses were connected, and we thought it would be neat if the lake and my house was somehow connected to the creek around his, so we resolved to find out. We were going to make maps. The plan was to make 2 separate maps, and then combine them. We would then make one map exploring the area around the creek near his house, and make another following the outflow from my lake. Originally, we were going to make one map, but we realized that wasn't possible since I had started drawing the map of my area so huge that the route from his house wouldn't be to scale. We kept the map from the lake at my house and the map from the creek at his house, and we would add to each when we stayed the night with each other. I'm going to take a sip. Throat's getting sore. Alright. For the first couple of weeks, it went really well. We would walk through the woods, along the water, and pause every couple of minutes to add to the map. And it seemed like the 2 maps would come together any day. We had no equipment needed for the job, not even compasses, but we tried to make do. We had no idea to impale the earth with a stick when we had reached the end of our venture, so that if we came back to the stick, we had the idea to impale the earth with a stick when we had reached the end of our venture, so that if we came upon the stick from the other direction the next weekend, we would know we had joined the maps. We might have been the world's worst cartographers. Eventually, however, the woods became too thick near the water coming from the lake, and we were unable to proceed further. We lost interest in the whole project for a bit and reduced our exploration significantly, though not completely, when we started selling snow cones. After I showed my mom the pictures I had taken home from school, and she had took away my snow cone machine, our interest in the maps revitalized. We had to come up with another plan. Although I didn't understand why, my mom had placed what I considered to be extremely severe restrictions on what I could do and where I could go. And I had to check in frequently if I went outside to play with Josh. This meant we couldn't stay in the woods for hours and continue to look for a new path. We thought that we could just swim when we got to the cutoff in the woods, but that clearly wouldn't work since the map would get wet. We tried going faster when we were coming from Josh's house, but we eventually ran into the same problem when we had a brilliant idea. We'd build a raft. Due to the construction in the neighborhood, there was a large amount of scrap building material that the company would just set in the ditch to keep it out of the road and off-site since they no longer needed it for the building. We originally conceived of a formidable ship, complete with a mast and an anchor, that quickly diminished into something more manageable. We set aside wood and took several large pieces of styrofoam that were backed with foam board and tied together with rope and kite string. We launched our vessel a little downwater from Mrs. Maggie and waved a farewell to her as she motioned us to come back her way, but there was no stopping us. The raft worked very well, and while we both behaved and spoke as if the functionality of the raft was a given, I know at least I was a little surprised. We each had a fairly long branch to use as a paddle, but we found it was easier to simply push against the land under the water than actually use them as intended. When the water became too deep, we simply lay on our stomachs and use our hands to paddle in the water, which still worked, albeit less well. The first time we had to resort to this method of propulsion, I remember thinking that from far above it must have looked like a colossally fat man with tiny arms out for a swim. I actually took several trips to get the raft to the impassable patch of woods that marked the farthest we had made it. After we had come up with the idea of marking the ground with a stick, we had taken to running through the woods until we got to the stick, and then, as we carefully and precisely we knew how, charting our course. This meant that the impasse was actually quite a bit away, so to sail from around my house all the way to the blockade in the woods was taking longer than expected. We'd sail for a bit and then dock the raft, and the next time we'd run through the woods to the raft to get a little bit further. We continued this well into first grade. Josh and I were assigned to different groups that year, so since we didn't really see one another during school day, our parents were more than willing to let us hang out all weekend each week. What's more, Josh's dad had taken on a lengthy construction job that required him to work over the weekends, and his mother was on call, so this meant Josh would stay at my house most every weekend for weeks on end. We should have been making excellent progress, but then we finally made it to the impasse and had the opportunity to explore past it. We couldn't find a place to dock the raft. The woods were simply too thick, and the water had eroded the land to the point that there was nearly 2-foot rise of earth over the tributary, which exposed the twisting and damp roots of trees. We'd have to turn back every time and leave the raft at the same thick of trees that prompted us to build it in the first place. Even worse, winter had arrived, so we couldn't justify leaving the house in our swimsuits. We were getting nowhere. We always had to come home before we could gain much ground. On Saturday, around 7 p.m., Josh and I were playing when one of my mom's co-workers knocked on the door. Her name was Samantha, and I remember her well now because I would propose to her a couple years later when my mom was visiting, or when I was visiting my mom. Water time, get the brain fluids going. All right. My mom said that she had to go to work to fix a problem that had arisen and that... Oh, wait. Skipped ahead. Her name was Samantha, and I remember her well now because I would propose to her a couple of years later when I was visiting my mom at work. My mom said that she had to go to work to fix a problem that had arisen, and she'd be back in 2 hours. Her car was being repaired, so she'd have to ride with Samantha, but I had gathered that the problem was Samantha's fault after discussing it in the car was why it would only take 2 hours. She said that under no circumstances that we were to leave the house or open the door for anyone. And she was in the middle of explaining that she would call every hour when she got there to check in. But she ended up that statement prematurely when she remembered that our phone had been turned off for delinquent payments. This was why Samantha had just come by unannounced. She looked me dead in the eyes she looked at me dead in the eyes as she was closing the door and said, "Stay put." This was our chance. We watched her drive down the serpentine road toward the exit. And as soon as the car rounded the last visible bend, we ran back to my room. I dumped my backpack out while Josh grabbed the map. "Hey, do you have a flashlight?" Josh chimed. "No, but we'll be back way before dark." I was thinking just in case we should have one. "My mom has one, but I don't know where she keeps it." "Wait." I ran into my closet and pulled a box down from the top shelf. "You have a flashlight in there?" "Not exactly." I opened the box and revealed 3 Roman candles that had been taken from the pile that my mother had amassed for the 4th of July that past summer, along with a lighter that I had managed to take from her some months before. This would ensure that we had at least some light if we needed it. This was a little bit before I had been given the opportunity to be afraid of the woods at night, so it wasn't fear that motivated my search for a light source, only practicality. We threw it all in the backpack and bolted out the back door, making sure to close it so boxes wouldn't get out. We had 1 hour and 50 minutes. We ran through the woods as fast as we possibly could and made it to the raft in about 15 minutes. We had our bathing suits on under our clothes, so we stripped off our shirts and shorts and left them in 2 separate piles, about 4 feet from the edge of the water. We untied the raft from the tree, grabbed our branch paddles, and cast off. We tried to move rapidly to the point beyond the contents of our ever-expanding map, as we didn't have time to waste seeing old sights. We knew that we were slower in the raft than on land, but that we would be in the raft for quite a while after the cutoff since the woods were too thick to walk through, and there wasn't a place to dock. This meant that we'd have to ride the raft back to the original docking site even if we found a new place to dock it further ahead. After we passed the last charted part of After we passed the last charted part of our map, the water began to get really deep, and eventually we could no longer touch the bottom with our tree branches, so we lay on our stomachs and paddled with our hands. It was getting darker, and as a result, it was becoming harder to distinguish the trees from one another, and we were both becoming slightly unnerved. In the interest of making good time, we were paddling as fast with our arms, but this caused a lot of noise as our hands repeatedly confronted and then broke through the water surface tension. During these periods, we could both hear the crunching of dead leaves and slapping of falling sticks in the woods on our right. As we would slow our pace and quiet our actions, the rustling in the woods would cease, and we began to wonder if we really ever heard it at all. We didn't know what kinds of animals resided this far in the woods, but we did know that we didn't wish to find out. As Josh amended the map that I was illuminating with a lighter, we were suddenly confronted with the fact that the sounds were not imagined. Rapidly and rhythmically we heard crunch, snap, crunch. This seemed to be moving slightly away from us, pushing through the woods just beyond our map. It had become too dark to see. We had misjudged how long the sun would linger. Nervously, I called out, "Hello?" There was a brief moment of breathless tension as we lay static in the water. The silence was suddenly broken by laughter. "Hello?" Josh cackled. "So what? Hello, Mr. Monster in the Woods. I know you're sneaking around, but maybe you'll answer to my hello? Hello?" I realized how stupid it was. Whatever animal it was, it wouldn't respond. I hadn't even realized I'd said it until afterwards. But if anything was actually there, I obviously wouldn't get a reply. Josh continued, "Hello?" in a high falsetto. "Hello? Hello?" I countered with a deep baritone, as I could manage. "Hello there, mate." "Hello." Beep boop. "Hello." We continued mocking each other, and we were in the process of turning the raft to head back when we heard, "Hello." It was whispered and forced as if it were powered by the last breath of a pair of deflating lungs. But it didn't sound sickly. It had come from the spot just off the map, which now sat behind us since we turned the raft around. I slowly shifted on the raft and faced the direction of the sound. As I fumbled with the Roman candle, I wanted to see. "What are you doing?" Josh hissed. But I had already lit it. As the sparking fuse sunk into the wrapper, I held it towards the sky. I had never actually shot one of these myself, but I thought to use it just like a flare in the movies. A glowing green orb rocketed out towards the stars and then quickly extinguished. I lowered my arm forward to the horizon. I could remember that there were several colors, but I couldn't remember how many times one of these would fire before being depleted. The second ball was a red light and fizzled out above the trees, but I still saw nothing. "Let's just go, man," Josh pressed, as he turned it to face the direction back home and began paddling desperately. "Just one more." I lowered my arm directly at the woods in front of me. Another red ball of light launched from the tube. It traveled straight ahead and collided with a tree briefly before exploding in the light in a much greater diameter. Still nothing. I dropped the firework in the water and watched as more struggling fireballs burst free, only to quickly die, suffocated by water. As we began paddling in the direction towards my house, we heard a loud, unconcealed rustling in the woods. The breaking of branches and trampling of fallen leaves overpowered the sound of our splashing. It was running. In our panic, we jostled the raft too violently and felt one of the ropes under my chest loosen. Josh, be careful! But it was too late. Our raft was breaking. Before too long, it had completely fallen apart. We each held on to separate pieces of styrofoam, but the pieces weren't big enough to keep us completely afloat, and our legs dangled beneath us in the winter water. Josh, quick! I yelled as I pointed to the water right next to him. He scrambled, but it was too cold to move, and we both watched our map float away. I'm cold, man. Josh shuddered dejectedly. Let's just get out of the water. We approached the shore, but each time we attempted to pull ourselves up, we'd hear frantic rustling and thundering toward us from the woods just above. Eventually, we were too cold and weak to try anymore. Steadily, we kicked our legs and found ourselves nearing the dock site. We toppled off the debris and tried to pull it on land, but Josh had slipped away and floated in the direction of the lake. We took off our swimsuits and were desperate to get in our dry clothes to shield us from the biting chill of the air. I slid my shorts, but there was something wrong. I turned to Josh. Where's my shirt? He shrugged and suggested maybe it got knocked into the water and floated into the lake. I told Josh to go back to my house. And to say that we were playing hide and seek if my mom was home. I had to find my shirt. I ran behind the houses and peered out into the water and scouted along the shoreline. It occurred to me that with any luck, maybe I could find the map too. I was moving pretty fast. I needed to get home and was about to give up when my concentration was interrupted by the sound coming from behind me. Hello. Hello? I whipped around. It was Miss Maggie. It was Mrs. Maggie. I had never seen her at night before. And in this poor light, she looked extremely frail. The usual warmth that wrapped her manner seemed to be snuffed out by the chill. I couldn't remember ever seeing her without a smile, and her face looked strange. Hello, Miss Maggie. Oh, hi, Chris. The warmth and the smile returned to her, even if her memories had not. I couldn't see it was you in the dark there. Jokingly, I asked if she was going to invite me for a snack, but she said maybe another time. I was too busy looking for my map and the shirt to really engage her. But she sounded happy and I didn't feel bad. She said a couple of things, but I was too distracted to pay attention. I said goodnight and ran down her driveway towards my house. Behind me, I could hear her walking across the frozen yard, but I didn't turn around and wave. I had to get home. I made it home a couple of minutes before my mom did. By the time she came in, Josh and I had already changed clothes and warmed up. We'd gotten away with it, even though we had lost the map. Couldn't find it? Nah, but I saw Mrs. Maggie. She called me Chris again. I'm telling you, dude, just be glad you've never seen her at night. We both laughed, and he asked me if she invited me in for a snack, joking that the snacks must be terrible since she couldn't even give them away. I told him that she didn't, and he was surprised, and now that I had time to think about it, so was I. Literally, every time we had seen her, she had invited us in for snacks. And here, I had, albeit sarcastically, invited myself, and she said no. Josh talked more about Mrs. Maggie, and I suddenly realized that the lighter might still be in my pocket, and that it would be disastrous for my mom to find it. I grabbed the shorts off the floor and patted through my pockets. I felt something, but it was much lighter. But it wasn't the lighter. I felt my back pocket and slid a folded piece of paper, and my heart leapt. The map? I thought, but I watched it float away. As I unfolded the paper, my stomach turned as I tried to understand what I was seeing. Drawn on the paper inside of a large oval were two stick figures holding hands. One was much bigger than the other, but neither had faces. The paper was torn so part of it was missing, and there was a number written near the top right corner. It was either 15 or 16. I nervously handed Josh the paper and asked him if he had put it in my pocket at some point, but he scoffed at the idea, asked why I was so upset. I pointed towards the smaller stick figure and was what was written next to it. It was my initials. I shook it off and told Josh the rest of the conversation between Mrs. Maggie and I. I had always attributed the odd exchange to her being sick. Revisiting the events in my life all these years later, as I think about it now, the feeling of profound sadness for Mrs. Maggie returns, but it is augmented by the looming feeling of despair when I think about why she said maybe another time. I knew what she had said, and I didn't understand what it meant that night. I didn't understand what her words had meant weeks later when I watched men in strange orange biohazard suits carry what I thought were black bags full of garbage out of her house, or why the whole neighborhood smelled like death that day. I still didn't understand when they condemned the house and boarded it up a little while before we moved. I understand now. I understand why her last words were so important, even if neither she nor I realized it at the time. Mrs. Maggie had told me that night that Tom had come home, but I know now who had really moved in, just as I know why I never saw her body brought out on a stretcher. The bags weren't filled with garbage. Alright, fellows. We are up on hour 3. Let me catch up on these. Catch up on these messages. Hot take. I also hate chili. I don't like chili either. Not a hot take. Especially chili with beans. I'm not saying you're gross, but you're the DEFCON Wario. At least saute it. I'll have onions in any form. Golden L ratio. L plus ratio. God damn it. You should point some hot rod flames on your brain so it will go fast. Yeah, I should do that. Hello, Mario. Yeah, I hope you don't plan on speaking tomorrow if you're going to be reading aloud for 5 hours straight tonight. Yep, I still regret from last time. Anyways, we are on hour 3. And I'm going to take a quick meal break. So it should be about probably 10 minutes at most. So let me get a BRB screen up. Because I'm starving. I didn't have dinner. Alright, I'll be right back. Motherfucker, this is a BRB screen? No, it is not. This is a BRB screen. Just put text on the screen that says BRB. Actually, yeah, that'd be a lot easier. Can I just add text? Yeah, we can. Yeah, sweet. All right. So, I'll be back in a few, boys. Alrighty, folks, we are back. Had a chicken thigh and a little bit of spinach. So then, how are we holding up tonight, guys? Are we in for the long haul? We're approaching the final hours. We're on the final stretch, the final 2 hours. Sounds healthy, you smelly hipster. Fuck you! If I wanted to be a fucking smelly hipster, I'd eat chicken breast. Ew! Also, I fucking love spinach. It's Nathema. They reappear in chat with the smiling emoji. But yes. Take another quickie sippy. Raw spinach is good. Fuck yes. Like, instead of lettuce, I'll put that on. It is delicious. Cooking the spinach, though, no thank you. Or like wet canned spinach? Fuck that. Give me the leaves. Alrighty. So we're on the final 2 parts. Settle in, folks. We are about to begin. Once I refine my place. Alright. Chapter 4. Screens. I've intentionally withheld some details from a lot of my stories. I've left my hopes concerning the way things might influence my evaluation of the way they actually are. I don't think there's any point to that anymore. At the end of the summer, between kindergarten and first grade, I caught the stomach flu. This has all of the components of the regular flu. However, with the stomach flu, you throw up in a bucket and not the toilet because you are sitting on it, and sickness gets purged from both ends. This lasted for about 10 days, but just before it had passed, the sickness was granted an extension in the form of pink eye. My eyelids were so fused together by dried mucus generated during the night that the first day I awoke with the infection, I thought I had gone blind. When I started first grade, I had a kink in my neck from 10 days of bed rest and 2 swollen bloodshot eyes. Josh was in another group and didn't have my lunch. So in the cafeteria, bursting with 200 kids, I still had a table to myself. I started keeping spare food in my backpack that I would take into the bathroom to eat after lunch, since my school meals were usually confiscated by older kids who knew I wouldn't stand up to them, since no one would stand with me. This dynamic persisted even after my condition cleared up, since no one wants to be friends with the kid who got bullied. Lest they have some of that aggression directed towards them. The only reason this stopped was due to the actions of a kid named Alex. Alex was in 3rd grade and was bigger than most of the other kids in any grade. Around the 3rd week of school, he started sitting with me at lunch, and this put an immediate end to my shortage of food supply. He was nice enough, but he seemed kind of slow. We never really talked at length except for when I finally decided to ask why he had been sitting with me. He had a crush on Josh's sister, Veronica. Veronica was in the 4th grade and was probably the prettiest girl in the school. Even as a 6-year-old who fully endorsed the notion that girls were disgusting, I still knew how pretty Veronica was. When she was in the 3rd grade, Josh told me 2 boys had actually gotten into a physical fight, which erupted out of an argument concerning the significance of the messages she had written in their yearbooks. One of the boys eventually hit the other on the forehead with the corner of a yearbook, and the wound required stitches to close. While not one of those 2 boys, Alex wanted her to like him and confessed that he knew Josh and I were best friends. I gathered that he had hoped that I would convey his ostensibly philanthropic deed to Veronica, and that she would presumably be so moved by his selflessness that she'd take an interest in him. If I told her, he would continue to sit with me for as long as I needed him to. Because this was during the time that Josh mostly stayed at my house, building the raft and navigating the tributary with me, I didn't have the chance to bring it up with Veronica because I simply didn't see her. I told Josh about it and he made fun of Alex, but said that he would tell his sister since I wanted him to. I doubted that he would. Josh was annoyed that people seemed to be so taken with his sister. I remember him calling her an ugly crow. I never said anything to Josh, but I remember wanting to say even then that she was pretty and one day would be beautiful. I was right. When I was 15, I was seeing a movie at my place, or at a place my friends and I had come to call the Dirt Theater. It was probably nice at one point, but time and neglect had weathered the place severely. The theater had movable tables and chairs on a level floor, so when the theater was full and there were very few places you could sit and see the whole screen, the theater was still open, I imagine for the reasons. 1, it was cheap to see the movie there. 2, they showed a different cult movie twice a month at midnight. And 3, they sold beer to underage kids during the midnight showings. I went for the first 2, and the night they were showing Scanners by David Cronenberg for $1. My friends and I were sitting in the very back. I wanted to sit closer to the front for a better view, but Ryan had driven us, so I relented. A couple minutes before the movie started, a group of girls walked in, and they were pretty attractive, but whatever beauty they might have had was eclipsed by the girl with the dirty blonde hair, even though I had only caught a glimpse of her profile. As she turned to move to her seat, I caught full view of her face, which gave me the feeling of butterflies in my stomach. It was Veronica. I hadn't seen her in a long time. Josh and I saw progressively less of one another after we out to my old house, or after we snuck out to my old house that night when we were 10. And usually when I'd visit him, she'd be out with her friends. While everyone stared at the screen, I stared at Veronica, only looking away when the feeling that I was being a creep overcame me. But that feeling would quickly subside and my eyes would return to her. She really was beautiful, just like I had thought she'd been when I was a kid. When the credits started to roll and my friends got up and left, there was only one exit and they didn't want to be trapped waiting for the crowd to clear. I lingered in hopes of catching Veronica's attention, and as she and her friends walked by, I took my chance. "Hey, Veronica." She turned towards me, a little startled. "Yeah?" I got out of my seat and stepped a little into the light and coming through the open door. "It's me, It's me, Josh's old friend from way back. How have you been?" "Oh my God, hey, it's been so long." She motioned to her friends, and she'd be out in a second. "Yeah, a few years at least. Not since the last time I stayed over with Josh. How is he anyway?" "Oh right, I remembered all you guys' games. Do you still play Ninja Turtles with your friends?" She laughed a little and I blushed. "No, I'm not a kid anymore. Me and my friends play X-Men now." I was really hoping she'd laugh. She did. "Ha! You're cute. Do you come to these movies every time?" I was still reeling from what she said. Does she really think I'm cute? Did she just mean I was funny? Does she think I'm attractive? I suddenly realized that she had asked me a question, and my mind grasped for what it was. "Yeah," I said too loudly. "Yeah, I try to anyway. What about you?" "I come every now and then. My boyfriend didn't like these movies, but we just broke up, and so I plan on coming from now on." I was trying to be casual, but failed. "Oh, well, that's cool. Not that you guys broke up. I just meant that you'd be able to come more often." She laughed again. I tried to recover. "So, are you coming the week after next? There's supposed to be show Day of the Dead, but it's really cool." "Yeah, I'll be here." She smiled, and I was about to suggest that maybe we could sit together when she quickly closed the space between us and hugged me. "It was really good seeing you," she said with her arms around me. I was trying to think of what to say when I realized the biggest problem was that I had forgotten how to talk. Luckily, Ryan, who I could hear approaching from the hallway, came in and spoke for me. "Dude, you know the movie's over, right? Let's get the fuck out of..." "Oh, yeah!" Veronica let go and said that she'd see me next time. She was played out of the room by some poor music Ryan was making with his mouth. I was furious, but it dissipated as soon as I heard Veronica laughing in the lobby. Day of the Dead couldn't come soon enough. Ryan's family was going to be out of town, so he wouldn't be able to drive us. But the other friends I was with that night didn't have cars. A couple of days before the movie, I asked my mom if she could take me. She responded almost immediately by denying my request. But I had persisted, and she'd pick up on my desperation in my voice. She asked why I wanted to go so badly. She asked why I wanted to go. She asked why I wanted to go so badly since I had seen the movie before, and I hesitated before saying that I was hoping to see a girl there. She smiled and asked playfully if she knew the girl, and I reluctantly told her it was Veronica. The smile disappeared from her face, and she coldly said no. I decided that I would call Veronica to see if she could pick me up. I had no idea if she lived at home, but it was worth a try. Then I realized that Josh might answer. I hadn't talked to him in almost 3 years, and if he answered, I obviously couldn't ask to talk to his sister. I felt guilty for calling to speak to Veronica and not Josh, but I dismissed that quickly. Josh hadn't called me in years either. Picked up the phone, dialed the number that was still embedded in my muscle memory for having dialed it so often on all those years ago. It rang several times before someone picked up. It wasn't Josh. I felt a mixture of both relief and disappointment. I realized in that second that I really missed Josh. I would call after this weekend and talk to him, but this was my only chance to see if Veronica could go or what would take me, so I asked for her. The person told me I had dialed the wrong number. I repeated the number back to her, and she confirmed. She said that they must have changed the number, and I agreed. I apologized for the disturbance and hung up. I was suddenly intensely sad now because I couldn't contact Josh, even if I wanted to. I felt terrible for having been afraid that he might answer the phone. He had been my very best friend. I realized that the only way I could be put back in touch with him would be through Veronica. So now, not that I needed one, I had another reason to see her. I told my mom the day before the movie that I was no longer concerned with going, but was hoping she could drop me off at my friend Chris's house. She relented and dropped me off that Saturday, a couple of hours before the movie. My plan was to walk from his house to the theater since he only lived about a half-mile away. They went to a church early on Sundays so his parents would go to sleep early Saturday night, and Chris was fine with not coming with me since he planned on chatting with this girl he met online. He said that the walk back to his house would be even lonelier after she laughed in my face when I tried to kiss her, and I told him not to electrocute himself when he tried to have sex with his computer. I did that once, and yeah, I don't think my dick's grown back. I left his house at 11:15. I tried to pace myself so I'd get there just a little bit before the movie. I was going by myself, and so I didn't want to just hang around there waiting. On my way to the theater, I figured that if Veronica showed up at all, it would be too lucky for us to arrive at the same time, so I debated whether I should wait outside or just go in. Both had their pros and cons. I was grappling with these concerns. I noticed that the steady stream of streaking cars, lights, that had been overtaking me had been replaced by a single constant spotlight that had refused to pass. The road wasn't illuminated by streetlights, so I was walking in the grass with the road about 2 feet away to my left. I stepped a little more to my right and craned my neck over my shoulder to see what was behind me. The car had stopped about 10 feet behind me. All I could see were the violently bright headlights that were cutting through the otherwise Stygian surroundings. I thought that might be one of Chris's parents. Maybe they had come to check in on us and seen that I was gone. It wouldn't have taken much pressing for Chris to confess, but I took one step toward the car and it broke its pause and started driving towards me at a slow pace. It passed me and I saw it wasn't Chris's parents' car, or any other car that I recognized for that matter. I tried to see the driver, but it was too dark. My pupils had shrunk when faced with the blinding lights from the car that moved from moments before. They adjusted enough so that I could see the tremendous crack on the back of the window as the car drove away. I didn't think much of the whole affair. Some people find it fun to scare other people. I often hide around corners and jump out at my mom after all. I timed it right and I got there about 10 minutes before the movie. I had decided to wait outside until around 11:57, since that would give me time to find her outside, or find her inside if she was already seated, as I was considering the possibility that she might not show. I saw her. She was alone and she was beautiful. I waved to her and walked to her. I waved to her and walked to close the distance. She smiled and asked if my friends were already inside. I said that they weren't, and I realized that this must seem like I was trying to make this a date. She didn't seem bothered by that, nor was she bothered when I handed her the ticket I had already bought. She looked at me quizzically and said, And I said, "Don't worry, I'm rich." She laughed and went inside. I bought us 1 popcorn and 2 drinks and spent most of the movie debating on whether or not I should time reaching my hand into the popcorn bag when she reached hers in as a way would touch. She seemed to enjoy the movie, and before I knew it, it was over. We didn't linger in the theater, and because this was a midnight show, we couldn't loiter in the lobby, so we walked outside. The parking lot of the theater was big enough to be connected with the mall that had gone out of business. Not wanting the night to be over just yet, I continued the conversation while casually walking toward the old mall. As we were about to round the corner and leave the theater out of sight, I looked back and saw that her car wasn't the only one left in the parking lot. The other one had a large crack on the back windshield. My immediate uneasiness turned into understanding. That makes a lot of sense. The driver of the car works here and must have figured I was on my way to the movie. Injecting real horror into the life of a horror fan seemed like an obvious move. We walked around the mall and talked about the movie. I told her that I thought Day of the Dead was better than Dawn of the Dead, but she refused to agree. I told her of when I called her old number and about my dilemma about who answered the phone. She didn't find it as funny as I did, but she took my phone and put her number in it. She commented that it might be the worst cell phone she'd ever seen. Her evaluation wasn't rescinded when I told her I couldn't even receive pictures on it. I called her so she'd have my number, and she programmed it in. Gonna take a quick sippy real quick. She told me that she was graduating, but she hadn't done well in school so far that year, so she wasn't sure if she'd even get into college. I told her to attach a picture of herself to the application, and they'd pay her to go. Or they'd pay her to go there just so they could look at her. She didn't laugh at that one, and I thought she might have been offended. She might have thought I was implying that she couldn't get in based on her intelligence. I nervously glanced at her, and she was just smiling, and even in this poor light, I could see that she was blushing. I wanted to hold her hand, but I didn't. As we walked down the final side of the mall, back toward the theater, I asked her about Josh. She told me she didn't want to talk about it. I asked her if he was at least doing alright, and she just said, "I don't know." I figured Josh must have taken the wrong turn somewhere and started getting into trouble. I felt bad, felt guilty. As we reached the parking lot, I noticed that the car with the cracked back window was gone, and her car was now the only one in the parking lot. She asked me if I needed a ride, and even though I really didn't, I said I'd appreciate it. I had drunk my whole soda during the movie, and the walking was putting pressure on my bladder. I knew that I could wait until I was back at Chris's, but I had decided that I was going to try to kiss her when she dropped me off, and I didn't want this biological nagging to rush me out of the car. This would be my first kiss. I could think of no ruse to conceal what I needed to do. The theater had long closed, so I only had one option. I told her that I was going to go behind the theater to piss, and I'd be back in 2 shakes. It was obvious that I thought it was hilarious, and she seemed to laugh at how funny I found it, and that how funny it was clear, or how funny it was obvious that I thought it was hilarious, and she seemed to laugh more at how funny I found it than at how funny it clearly was. Yeesh. On my way toward the theater, I stopped and turned towards her. I asked her if Josh had ever told her that kid named Alex had done something nice for me. She paused to think for a moment and said that he had. She inquired as to why I had asked, but I said it was nothing. Josh really was a good friend. When I went to go behind the theater, I realized that there was a chain link fence extending off to the running panel to the walls of the building where I stood. She could still see me, and the fence seemed to stretch on endlessly. So I thought I'd just hop it, duck out of sight, and return as quickly as possible. It may have been too much effort, but I thought it polite. I climbed the fence and walked just a little ways until I was out of sight and urinated. For a moment, the only sounds were the crickets in the grass behind me and a collision of liquid and cement. These sounds were overpowered by a noise that I could still hear when it was quiet, and there was no other noises to distract my ears. In the distance, I heard faint screeching, which quickly subsided, only to be replaced with a cascade of thundering vibrations. I realized quickly enough what it was. It was a car. The growling of the engine got louder, and then I thought, no, not louder, closer. As soon as I realized this, I started back towards the fence, but before I could get very far, I hear a brief truncated scream, and the roar of the engine terminated into a deafening thud. I started running, but only after 2 or 3 steps, I tripped and but after 2 or 3 steps, I was tripped by a loose piece of stone and fell hard and fast to the concrete, my head striking the corner of the chair as I fell. I was dazed and maybe for 30 seconds, but the renewed rumbling of the engine drew my senses back, and my equilibrium was restored by adrenaline. I redoubled my efforts. I was worried that whoever had crashed the car might harass Veronica. As I was climbing the fence, I saw that there was still only one car in the parking lot. I didn't see any evidence of a crash. I thought that I might have misjudged my direction and proximity. As I ran towards Veronica's car and my orientation changed, I saw what the car had hit, and my legs stopped working almost completely. It was Veronica. Her car was sitting between us, and I closed the distance and walked around, and she came in full view. Her body was twisted and crumpled like a discarded figure meant to represent a catalog of things the human body cannot do. I could see the bone of her right shin jutting from her jeans, and her left arm was wrapped so hard around her back of her neck that her hand fell on her right breast. Her head was craned back, and her mouth hung widely open towards the sky. There was so much blood. As I looked at her, I actually found it hard to discern whether she was laying on her back or her stomach. It was an optical illusion that made me feel sick. When you are confronted with something in the world that simply doesn't belong, your mind tries to convince itself that it is dreaming. And to that end, it provides you with the distinct sense of all things moving slowly as if through sap. In that very moment, I honestly felt that I would wake up any minute. But I didn't wake up. I fumbled with my phone to call for help, but I had no signal. I could see Veronica's phone sticking out of what I thought was her front right pocket. I had no choice. Trembling, I reached for her phone and slid it out. She moved and gasped for air so violently, it seemed as if she was trying to breathe in the whole world. This startled me so much that I staggered back and fell onto the asphalt with her phone on my hand. She was trying to adjust her body to get it to its natural position, but with every spasm and jerk, I could hear the cracking and grinding of bones. Without thinking, I scrambled over to her and put my face over hers and just said, "Veronica, don't move. Don't move, okay? Just stay still. Don't move, Veronica. Please don't move." I kept saying it, but the words started to fall apart as tears streaming down my face. I opened her phone. It still worked. It was still on the screen where she had saved my number, and when I saw it, I felt my heart break a little. I called 911 with her, telling her that she would be okay, and feeling guilty for lying to her every time about it, every time I said it. When the sounds of the sirens tore through the air, she seemed to become more alert. She had remained conscious since I found her, but now more of the light was coming back to her eyes. Her brain was still protecting her from pain, though it looked as if it was finally allowing her to become aware that something was terribly wrong with her. Her eyes rolled over to mine, and her lips moved. She was struggling to hear, but I heard her. Picture, my picture. He took it. I didn't understand what she meant, so I said the only thing I could. "I'm so sorry, Veronica." I told her I rode with her in the ambulance when she finally lost consciousness. I waited in the room that they had reserved for her. I still had her phone, so I put it in her purse and called my mom from the hospital phone. It was about 4 a.m. I told her that I was fine, but that Veronica was not. She cursed at me and said that she'd be right there. But I told her I wasn't leaving until Veronica was out of surgery. She said she'd come anyways. My mama and I didn't speak that much. I told her I was sorry for lying, but she said that we'd talk about it later. I think that we talked more in that room. I think that had we talked more in that room, if I had just told her about boxes or the night with the raft, if she had just told me more of what she knew, I think that things would have changed. But we sat there in silence. She told me that she loved me and that I could call her whenever I wanted her to just come and get me. As my mom was leaving, Veronica's parents rushed in. Her dad and my mom exchanged a few words that appeared to be quite serious while Veronica's mother talked to the person at the desk. Her mother was a nurse, but didn't work at this hospital. I'm sure that she had tried to get Veronica transferred, but her condition was prohibitive. While we waited, the police came in and talked to each of us. I told them what happened. They made some notes, and then they left. She came out of surgery at 90% of her body was covered in thick white cast. Her right arm was free, but the rest of her was bound up like a cocoon. She was still under, but I remember how I felt when I had a cast in kindergarten. I asked the nurse for a marker, but I couldn't think of anything to write. I slept in a chair in the corner and went home the next day. I came back every afternoon for several days. At some point, they had moved another patient into the room with her and set up a screen around Veronica's bed to act as a partition. She didn't seem to be feeling better, but she had made more moments of lucidity. But even during these periods, she wouldn't really talk. Her jaw had been broken by the car, so the doctors had wired it shut. I sat with her for a while, but there was nothing much I could say. I got up and walked over to her. I kissed her on the forehead, and she whispered through her clenched teeth, "Josh." This surprised me a little, but I looked at her and said, "Has he come to see you?" "No." I found myself really irritated. Even if Josh is going to be getting Even if Josh has been getting into trouble, he should still come see his sister, I thought. I was about to express this when I said, "No, Josh, he ran away. I should have told you." I felt my blood turn to ice. When did this happen? When he was 13. Did he leave a note or something? On his pillow. She started crying and I followed her. But I think now we were crying for different reasons, even if I didn't realize it. At this point, there were a lot of things I still didn't remember about my childhood. And there were a lot of connections I hadn't made yet. I told her I had to go, but she could text me anytime. I got a text from her the next day telling me not to come back. I asked her why, and she didn't want to me. I asked her why, and she didn't want me to see her like that again. I agreed, begrudgingly. We texted each other every day, though I kept this from my mom because I knew that she didn't like me talking to Veronica. Usually her texts were fairly short, and mostly in response to more lengthy posts I would send to her. I tried calling her only once, but I was sure she was screening her calls, but hoped I could hear her voice. She picked up but didn't say anything. I could hear how labored her breathing was. About a week after she told me not to come see her anymore, she sent me a text that simply read, "I love you." I was filled with so many different emotions, but I responded by expressing the most prevalent one. I replied, "I love you too." She said that she wanted to be with me, and she couldn't wait until she could see me again. She told me that she had been released and was convalescing at her house. These exchanges carried on for several weeks, but every time I asked to come see her, she would say, "Soon." I kept insisting, and the following week she said that she thought she might be able to make it to the next midnight movie. I couldn't believe it, but she insisted that she would try. I got a text from her the afternoon of the movie saying, "See you tonight." I got Ryan to drive me since Chris's parents had found out what had happened and said I wasn't welcome at their house anymore. I explained to Ryan that she might be in bad shape, but that I really cared about her, so to give her some space. He accepted that, and we headed down there. Veronica didn't show. I had saved a seat for her right next to me near the exit so she could get in and out easily. But 10 minutes into the movie, a man slid into the chair. I whispered, "Excuse me, the seat is taken." But he didn't seem to respond. He just stared ahead at the screen. I remember wanting to move because there was something wrong with the way he was breathing. I forfeited because I realized she wasn't coming. I texted her the next day if she was all right and inquired why she didn't show the previous night. She responded with what would turn out to be the last message I received from her. She simply said, "See you again soon." She was delirious, and I was worried about her. I sent her several replies reminding her about the movie and saying that it was no big deal, but she should just stop replying. I grew increasingly upset over the next several days. I couldn't reach her at home anymore, or I couldn't reach at her home because I didn't know that number. And I wasn't even sure where they lived. My mood became increasingly depressed, and my mother, who had been really nice as of late, asked me if I was okay. I told her that I hadn't heard from Veronica in days, and the warmth left her disposition. "What do you mean? She was supposed to meet me at the movies yesterday. I know it's only been like 3 weeks since she got hit, but she said she would try to come. And after that, she just stopped talking to me altogether. She must hate me. She looked confused, and I could read her face that she was trying to tell me if my mind had simply broken. When she saw that hadn't, her eyes began to water, and she pulled me towards her, embracing me. She was beginning to sob, and it seemed too intense a reaction to my problem. And I had no reason to think that she particularly cared for Veronica. She drew in a shuddering breath, and then said something that still makes me nauseous even now. Veronica's dead, sweetheart. Oh God, I thought you knew. She died the last day you visited her. Oh baby, she died weeks ago. She had completely broken down, but I knew it wasn't because of Veronica. I broke the embrace and staggered backwards, my mind swimming. This wasn't possible. I had just exchanged messages with her yesterday. I could only think to ask one question. It was probably the most trivial I could ask. Then, why is her phone still on? She continued sobbing. She didn't answer. I exploded. Why did it take them so long to shut off her goddamn phone? The crying broke enough to mutter, "The pictures." I would come to find out that her parents thought her phone had been lost in the accident, despite the fact I had put it in her purse. The night she was brought to the hospital. When they retrieved her belongings, the phone was not among them. They intended to contact the phone company at the end of the billing cycle to deactivate the line. They received a call informing them that them of a massive impending charge for hundreds of pictures that had been sent from her phone. Pictures that were all sent to my phone. Pictures that I never got because my phone couldn't receive them. They learned that they were all sent after the night she died. They deactivated the phone immediately. I tried not to think about the contents of those pictures, but I remember wondering for some reason whether I would have been in any of them. My mouth went dry, and I felt the painful sting of despair as I thought of the last message I received from her phone. See you again. Soon. Alrighty. Let's catch up on this. Screw lettuce and braised spinach. Damn fucking right, Anathema. Good taste. Can't wait until I contract kidney stones. When I was on keto, I used to keto a salad's worth of spinach. Hell yeah. You're damn right I was bigger than the rest of those kids, baby. Well, you are filthy weeaboo. You are the biggest. Cronenberg Scanners is definitely an experience for a bunch of preteens. It is a fucking good movie, isn't it? I don't like the idea of an experience to preteens. Preteens do suck. She programmed her phone number in it. Boomer author. Well, of course. I mean, the kids were playing outside. That chapter was long as shit. Yes, it was. And we are on the final hour. I think we'll do a quick YouTube poop this time. Find something short-ish. Oh yeah. Let's do this one. Oops. It's Halloween theme too.
You know, I'm suddenly reminded of the Bargain Cove.
Vandalism is cool, Bobby. No, not the birdhouse. Is that Bill? This is by original name, by the way. They're pretty new on the scene, but they're obviously pulling out all the stops. Peggy?
Maybe I could be Joey.
Halloween costumes are supposed to be scary.
Joe's pretty scary. What the? Scary.
Elmo. I don't even know what these things are.
Hell no.
Well, we still need a costume for Bobby.
Fat fuck bars. Elmo.
Peggy, that's not written for trick-or-treaters. It's for diabetics.
Eat it.
What? Wednesday, October 29th.
Terrible news. Halloween will the Jewish.
Luann, Halloween has got nothing to do with the fucking devil.
What is Bill doing?
Junie Harper says so.
Stupid fuck.
Stupid fuck. Oh my god, Lynn.
She just put some exciting new thing in her baby, and all she wanted to do was show it to us.
Hey, principal boss.
Hello, Hank.
What is that mouth?
You gotta take that digger outside.
Yes, sir. Oh, that's it.
Oh.
Hank, you know Mrs. Junie Harper.
So our Constitution guarantees a separation of
Constitution.
from state.
Scissors.
Whoa, pancakes.
Pancakes.
Sure do love pancakes.
Shut up, Bill. So that's how it is, huh?
Your ass is fat, your brain is small.
Hey, you seem like a regular guy.
What? What is going on here?
Bobby, next Halloween you're gonna be too old to dress up and be sexy. What?
You're not retarded, are you?
What?
Of course I am.
Bobby.
Dick.
You're a regular Halloween loser. You're a loser. Just like your old
Genichiro. Oh. Oh, Genichiro.
You big baby.
Red Peggy. Oh my god. Thursday, October 30th.
I'll never use toilet paper again.
Well, I think it is perfect. Although I still think Jamaican sausage works.
Hank Ellsbury. Halloween. That's a lot of wins.
You said I was wrong.
Luann is stupid. Junie Harper did.
Well, I don't care. Tomorrow night, I'm gonna come water.
Bobby, what are you doing?
She said that the city council plan will run over her.
What? With your eyes? Oh.
What in God's name?
Mood Bill. Friday, October 31st, Halloween night.
I heard my dad's a virgin.
Trick or treat.
And I get a barnacle platter pancake. A barnacle, what they say? A barnacle, the barnacle pancake platter.
What? Led's face on a pumpkin?
Bust. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was the bathroom. Oh, good Lord. You're a loser. You make me sick, you big baby.
Pancakes.
Pancakes.
Hey, what is it?
having another son.
Oh, God. Oops. Alrighty. It seems I had a minor technical difficulty. Fix that real quick. Alright. Getting my chat back up. Land Pumpkin. Uncle Hank, I'm very hungry. Give me the butter. I look like that and say that. I mean, we all need the butter. Music back up. Final part. Oops, scrolled me back up. I know a quick fix for that. Alright, final part, final hour, guys. Let's do this. On the first day of